how yesterday he invited him to accept Yubei, talking about the peach garden oath. Tihan sighs and asks with a smile, so why didn't her god recruit him sooner? And why is she angry at him for not being able to convince him? Bomb continues to aim at him and asks the master doesn't care about this, so why doesn't he forget about it? Tihan refuses and Jael asks if he doesn't understand the situation he's in. They tolerate him only because they are not sure that he will survive the fight with them. By the way, student number 1 is her. Bomb gets angry at her and asks if she wants to fight too. Jael refuses and says that however, she should leave and not interfere. She's going to fight. Apparently he is too weak to crawl into their zone after failing his mission. Why does he talk for so long? Tihan looks at her and asks what did she say? Do they want to start a fight? They look somehow quite weak. Jael targets him and asks if he was given eyes for beauty. Bomb also aims at him and says that he can attack. They were very surprised when they noticed Gangram, who approached them and asked what was going on here. They all put their weapons away, look at him, and he asks, did they really quarrel? Yesterday everything was fine. Jael points at Tihan and loudly says that this idiot can't stop talking nonsense about divine protection. Bomb is confused and is about to explain what happened. She says that their guardian angel said to bring him to his knees. Tihan asks what did she say? Did they persuade them to start a fight? Gangram asks the girls if Zeus still wants to get him. They both nodded in agreement. He asks Tihan if his god wants this too. He agrees and says that they really want to get him. Gangram thinks about all this and is silent for several seconds. He claps his hands and says they should do this. He will accept protection from the side that wins. They were all surprised by this and asked what he said. They stare at him and Gangram is about to tell them something. He draws his sword and says that however, they will fight him. If he wins, then they will have to abandon this idea, and their gods will also have to repay him. He could use at least a ghost class item, they should give it to them. Immediately afterwards they click on the system windows and communicate with their gods. Gangram looks at them and thinks that under the auspices of the gods you can use their power, but you must follow divine revelations. However, not all orders are revelations. If a person blindly follows the instructions of the gods, without thinking with his own head at all, then in the end one can become a puppet. He's not going to take that risk. Tihan says the gods say the fight won't be fair because he's too strong. Gangram says that they can agree not to use abilities. If they can hit him at least once, then victory will be theirs. Jael agrees to this. Gangram gets into a fighting stance and says that they should hurry up then. Immediately afterwards she takes out her bow and loudly agrees. She asks with a happy expression, but will the fight end too quickly? She was very shocked that Gangram attacked him without thinking. He grabs her hand, pulls her towards him, and with a serious expression on his face, says that he has no time to think about him. He told them this absolutely seriously. He hits her on the back of the head with the hilt of his sword, and Bomb points his weapon at him and loudly calls Jael. She was very surprised by what he did and looks at them. Gangram holds her sister with one hand in front of him and tells her to shoot. He ignores Tihan behind his back and says that it will be better for her if she pulls herself together. Gangram senses an attack from behind and ducks to dodge it. He threw Jael at Bomb and she lost her balance because of it, and he crouched down very quickly to dodge. Tihan throws another kick and says with a smile that he forgot about it. He looks at him with a joyful expression after this blow. Gangram jumped to the side, watches him closely and asks what he is happy about. Tihan kicks and hits the wall, but he manages to dodge the attack. He strikes back with his sword, but misses. Tihan looks at him with a smile and asks if this is all he can do. This way he will lose quickly. They both dodge a shot that hits close to them. Tihan turns to Bomb with an angry expression and asks why she is shooting him. Gangram runs up, grabs his head and slams his head very hard into the wall. Jael comes to her senses, gets up and says that she cannot let him win. Gangram very quickly turns to them, quickly runs towards them and strikes. but they both jump to the side. At the same moment, Sua, along with other students, enter this room and look at what is happening. Concerned people ask her if she thinks they need to stop them. The Yoon sisters take aim and shoot with worried expressions on their faces. Gangram easily dodges Taehyun's blow and mockingly asks if he can at least aim properly first. Bomb targets him and says there was no agreement that they couldn't unite against him. Taehyun throws a lot of punches, which he blocks and says that he will not find it too much. Sua looks at them with a small smile and says nothing. She leaves them and does something on her phone while a guy runs after her and calls her. She calls someone, agrees, thanks, and is going to say something about the address. Some time later, Gangram slams his sword into the floor in front of those he just defeated. He looks at them and calmly says that it seems they are finished. He sees no point in fighting any further. Taehyun looks at him with a serious expression, refuses and says that this is not all. Gangram sits down next to him and asks, he's not going to bother him for a whole week again, is he? He, of course, is ready to fight him, but he doesn't want to fight just because of the whim of the gods. To be honest, it disgusts him. Bomb lies on the ground with a sad expression on his face and sighs. Gangram says it might be a lot better if they just couldn't get along. Otherwise, they only pretended to become friends, but in fact they began to quarrel over their gods. He doesn't like that. Jaeol looks at him and is about to say something about the patron god, but stops. Gangram shocked her very much by asking if this god of hers orders her to kill the bomb, will she do it? He gets up and says that we need to learn to make decisions for ourselves. He looks at them with a sad look and says that they don't have to do what others say. Taehyun sits on the ground with a thoughtful expression after he said this. Bomb and his sister stand up, and she says that she accepts that they lost. She looks at Taehyun and says that she would like to apologize for attacking him without warning. Jaeol says that she wants to apologize for what she said earlier. He's a pretty good fighter. Taehyun blushed because he was praised and says that everything is fine. He was not a saint either. Johan peeks out from behind the doorway and calls to them. He goes to them and asks if he can come in to heal them. He begins to heal them and says that this is how fights end. They agree, and Gangram, who was not injured, calmly leaves this room. Taehyun says that, however, his balance was disrupted when she shot him in the shoulder. The Yoon sisters say it was really great, although it would be better if they stood closer to the front. Gangram remembers what happened and thinks that at first they fought with each other, but in the end they joined forces against a common enemy. He smiles and thinks that he is happy that they somehow managed to get closer. Sua, who is standing next to him, asks, did he plan everything from the very beginning? It is in battle that you can make good friends. Gangram turns to her and calls her name. Sua says that she called Father Johan because it seemed to her that they had quarreled very much. He agrees and thanks her for this. He asks if she is also a little uncomfortable with Taehyun. Sua waves his hand and says that this is not so, everything is fine. It just seems a little strange to her that she has the feeling that they already know each other. Gangram was very surprised when he heard this, remembers what Taehyun told him and wonders, does she think so too? He says that's great, she should be gentle with him. He thinks he should think more positively. At least if he disappears they won't abandon each other. At the same time, a man with long hair says that the trainees who failed in the third zone began the test in the first zone. Young-Yu says she understands this, although she doesn't have much hope. She sighs and says that Gangram managed it easily. What about Taehyun? He was pretty good, but moved to the second zone. The man asks, is she already giving up on Gangram? Young-Yu says that's not true. Now she wanted to get him even more. She says with a joyful expression that, by the way, there is still some good intern in the second zone. She is surprised when she notices the system window in front of her and asks if he answered so quickly. The system window says that he accepts the offer. Young-Yu starts laughing loudly because of this. She turns to the window and says that she would like to see Gongju's face when he finds out about this. She's looking forward to it. Some time later, Some kind of seal burns out and strong energy comes from this. The seal is destroyed completely and Anavi says that the 7th gate is open. Once they cleanse the demon realm, they will be able to leave these walls. It will be very difficult because this is the last room. They won't be able to leave until the cleanup is over, so she's a little worried. She bows, disappears, and says that she hopes to see them all safe and sound. She wishes them luck. Immediately afterwards, several people enter the portal, while others remain standing at the entrance. Baum looks around and asks why are they the only ones here. Tihan agrees and asks, besides, where is Father Johann? Sua said she needed to check something. She asked not to wait for her if she was late. Baum says that she has a feeling that Johann will come with Gajun. It seems he hasn't finished writing the novel yet. Tihan gets angry about this and asks who even cares. Gangram is going down the stairs at this time. Everyone notices him, waves their hands, and Tihan says that the gate is open. He must hurry. Gangram points his finger to the side and says that he will join a little later because he needs to prepare. Tihan asks what is he going to do. Gangram gestures with his finger and says that this is a very big secret. Jael turns to the others and asks if they should wait. Gangram waves to them and says that he will be back very quickly, so they can go. Baum leaves with the others and says he has to hurry. They walk, and she says that today he is somehow too happy. Apparently, he really wanted to leave this place. Gangram continues to wave at them and says that they will see each other later. After they leave, he turns around and goes somewhere with a serious expression on his face. He walks along a dark corridor and notices the silhouette of a man coming towards him. A small smile appears on his face and he says nothing. It was Sua who notices him and says that she heard that the last gate is open. Why didn't he go there? Gangram smiles and asks what is she talking about. Sua says she is already ready. Maybe he'll join. He says she can go first. He still needs to take care of something. After that, he starts to leave, but Sua puts his hand in front of him to stop him. Gangram is a little embarrassed by this and calls her by name. She looks at her phone and says that she was lost in thought. She doesn't have his number. She shows her phone screen and says that she has already exchanged contacts with everyone else. Will he give her his number? Gangram raises his hand to write his number, but stops and clenches his hand tightly into a fist. Sua, with a flushed and sad face, asks if he doesn't want to. Doesn't he really want to see her when they finally get out of here? Gangram stands still and holds his other hand with his hand and says nothing. Sua clenched her hand very tightly into a fist and trembles a little out of resentment. She asks, so that's why he kept his distance all this time. She loudly calls his name, and Gangram thinks about all this and looks away. They continue to stand silently in front of each other, and he thinks that this is why he did not want to get closer. He didn't intend to see any of them after they left this place. This is the only option to keep them safe when Beek Young comes for him. Sua calmed down a little and called him by name again. Gangram covers his face with his hand and says that he will now text her his number. He writes down the number and Sua looks at him and asks, he won't write down the wrong number, will he? Gangram gives her the phone back and says with a small smile that it is his number. Sua looks at him in disbelief for a few seconds and is silent for a few seconds. She leaves and says that she will believe him. She'll call him after they get out of here, so see you later. She leaves, and Gangram turns around and thinks that this will not happen. Some time later, Yorn fires a stream of fire at him, and he dispels it with a swing of his sword. Gangram applauds, and the system notifies about it, that the firebomb ability has been increased to medium ghost level. Linny uses her magnetic horn's skill and sends lightning into her sword. 4 days later, very tired animals lie on the ground, sleep, and make quiet sounds. Gangram says with a smile that they did a good job. It's time to rest. He lies down on the floor and says that we need to hurry to the kingdom of demons. The system notifies that an item has been received from the Father of Gods and People. Received an item from the Hero of Life. Gangram lies and says that it finally happened. I wonder how good these things are. The system notifies you about this, that he received the highest dragon rank Hermes shoes, Mengzi of the highest dragon rank, medicine of life, a life medicine of the highest ghost rank. Gangram holds these things in his hands and looks at the system window that appeared in front of his face. He puts it in his inventory with a happy face and thinks that what is surprising is that these are dragon rank items. In principle, such generous gods suit him. But they're still freaks who make people fight each other. He was very scared when Anavi leaned towards him and asked if he still hadn't entered the dungeon because he was waiting for it. Gangram turns to her and greets the inspector. Anavi says he spent time training again. Is he really not going to enter the last demon realm? Gangram looks away, sighs and says that he's not going yet. What is it? The others have already finished. Anavi says she cannot talk about the progress of other participants. Gangram asks, he can't even find out if there were any failures? Anavi shakes her head in refusal and apologizes to him. Gangram, with a slightly upset expression on his face, says that he understands this. He thinks that he knew that he would not be able to learn anything from her. He stands up and says that it looks like he'll have to check it out himself. Anavi asks, is he going to do it now? Gangram says that he will do this after a little training with his beasts. Now he wants to rest. He remembers something and thinks that in a past life, as soon as people left the training center, the media simply went crazy, talking about it on every corner. Then Sua cleared the demon realm on the third morning. But now there is no news, although 4 days have passed. Gangram lies on his bed, looks at the screen of his phone and asks why no one writes anything about this. Is the cleanup still not finished? He wrote that they should answer after they left the kingdom. He thinks that after Sua's group finishes the raid, then he can enter. Suddenly a wall crashes into the wall next to his head, and this scares the animals near him. Gangram looks at this with a very surprised expression on his face, looks at this arrow and wonders, is this a messenger of space and time? In the system window, it is written that the messenger of space and time is an arrow created from spiritual power. The arrow is capable of sending messages regardless of location. A system window appears in front of Gangram and wonders who sent this. The system notifies that a message has been received from an unknown person. He is very surprised by what he sees in this system window. There was a photo of a very badly injured Sua lying on the ground. Gangram touches this system window and calls her name. He is very shocked by what happened and looks at it with very strong shock. He remembers what happened in his past life when Sua hands him the phone and tells him that she likes him. Gangram looks at her with a blank expression and asks why. She says that he has yet to use the Steel Fate ability. Gangram looks at her with a blank expression and says nothing. Xingsu sits next to him and says that he also likes that he never takes the easy path, even when it is much easier. Gangram looks away and agrees and says that he understands her. He thinks that he didn't use this ability not because he didn't want to, but because he was too weak. Or was it sarcasm? Or she wants him to pay for her injured eye. Sua asks how much time he still needs for the Viper's room. She wanted to wait for him so they could go into the last room together. Gangram hands her the phone back and thinks that he understands now. She just wants to use his ability. He says he'll call her when he's done. He leaves and wonders with a smile, does he really look like someone who would be fooled by appearances? As soon as she lets her guard down, he will steal her destiny. Some time later, the two of them pass through the portal and the system notifies that they have entered the room of Sawn skeletons. They must find the tablet and escape the demon realm. There is no time limit. They put on a headband of sawed-off skeletons. Item effects are constantly activated. There are 7 danger levels in total. Gangram was very surprised when he saw the system window, in which it was written that this was a bandage of sawn skeletons. Every 24 hours the saw will be exposed more and more. Once the saw reaches the 7th level, the part on which the bandage was found will be amputated. The more bad karma they have, the more life-threatening it will be to confirm the place where the bandage is attached. Gangram says that their bandages will be cut off if they don't cleanse the demon realm in 7 days. Sua says that he will have to hurry to find the right item. She doesn't want to be left without hands, and he is lucky because he has a bandage on his little finger. Gangram says that everything depends on karma. The worse it is, the higher the chance of losing something important. Sua turns and says it looks like the less karma he has, the better. Gangram says he doesn't even know how to measure it. She shows a thumbs up with a joyful expression on her face and says that it turns out that he is a good person. Gangram asks how can she smile in such a situation. Sua turns around and says with a smile that she wants to be a good person like him. She sighs with a small smile and says that regardless of her fate, it's probably a little late to look at these groups. But right now, she just needs to be nice, right? Gangram, with a blank expression on his face, wonders if she is being honest. Is she pretending to be nice, or does she actually trust him? He remembers people who are negatively disposed towards him and wonders, did he seriously believe this? Who would even want to be on the same team with him? He brings only death to everyone around him. Will he be deceived again? Who would truly be honest with him? Sua notices something and asks what is that noise? Gangram, who is deep in thought, thinks that he is sure that she is the same as everyone else. Sua looks at him with a very worried expression and calls his name loudly. He continues to stand still while several human-like monsters are about to attack him. Sua surprises him greatly by running towards the monsters and pushing him away from the monsters. Gangram falls to the ground and sees how one of the monsters wounded her with a blow from a sword. He is very shocked by this and loudly calls her name. Some time later, Sua stands in the room and points her sword at the monsters that stand in front of her. These monsters leave, and she says that she would be faster if she knew that they were not chasing him in other rooms. Gangram sits on the floor and says that the Doom Notice windows he sees were not illuminated. Sua asks with a worried expression if he thinks she blames him for this. He misunderstood. On the contrary, he helped her a lot by telling her about the skills of monsters, so Gangram asks very loudly how he could help in any way. She suffered again because of him. He continues to sit on the floor and says that there is a forest of swords in the room. She lost her eye when she tried to protect him. He cries and says that she is much better than him. Why does she hang out with someone like him? Sua was very surprised by this and looks at him. She smiles, sighs and says that she said it was all because Gangram comes to his senses because Yorn bit his hand. He was surprised because of this and looks at the system window. He looks at the animals, who make worried sounds and look at him. He says with a very worried expression that he has to save Sua. Gangram continues to sit and thinks that this is not so. Had he forgotten why he stayed, he would put her in much more danger if he went there. The animals try to calm him down, and he thinks that it is because of his fate that those around him are in trouble. He is sure that it will be better for her if he stays here. Sua is pretty strong. He again plunges into memories of the past. She helps him up and says that she told him. She enjoys fighting his fate, and he can help her next time. Some time later, Gangram passes through the portal, and the system notifies that he has entered the room of fused skeletons. The gods who are watching him say that they must see that he has come here. Now he will definitely be chosen. Gangram thinks that in the end, he came after all. One of the gods asks why it took him so long. Did something happen to him? Gangram asks if they know where Sua went. The gods ask, and this is his first question. Why would they tell him this? They will say if he recognizes one of them as his god. True, he should worry more about himself. Gangram looks at the bandage on his neck through the reflection in his sword. He notices similar bandages on his arm and thinks it's on his neck, wrists, and ankles. The gods say that he is surprisingly calm. His head will be cut off if he does not clear this room in 7 days. Gangram buttons up his jacket to hide the bandage and asks with a serious expression on his face, "Does this mean they don't know where Sua is now?" The gods say that perhaps in the east or west, or maybe in the north or south. He must go north. He needs to stop lying. He needs to go east. Gangram takes out a map and thinks that apparently he will have to look for it on his own. The system notifies that the room of fused skeletons is registered on the map of the Demon Kingdom. At the moment, 0% of the territory has been explored. After this, Gangram begins to search through this dungeon along with his animals. After some time, he finds a lot of liquid on the floor. He inspects it and says there was a battle here. He picks up the cross and says that this must belong to Father Johann. He sees arrows and bullet holes in the wall and says that the marks on the wall were most likely left by Baum and Jael. Was Sua with them? The gods continue to watch him and say that he is surprised at how attentive he is. Has he really become a detective? Isn't he looking for his grave? It doesn't matter, you have to have fun. Gangram comes to a spacious room with many different items. The gods say that the detective appears to be in danger now. There was no battle nearby. Gangram looks around and says that there are doors everywhere. Apparently he will have to go through all this. He looks at the floor and notices something. He sees a cross left on the floor and asks if this mark is a clue. Where did they go? He looks around and thinks that if the cross means that they did not go this way, then there must be a different mark on one of the 3 doors. This does not seem to be the case. One of the gods says that all these doors have a cross. Gangram wonders, maybe he was mistaken. One of the gods thinks that he was lured by Sua. He has some idea and goes to the center of the room with different objects. The gods who are watching him ask, is this freak going to sit on the throne? Okay, it would be just that, but he stood on this throne. Gangram notices a circle mark on the ceiling and says he found it. He climbed onto the roof and is surprised when he notices something in this room. He looks around this room and says that everything is scattered in this place. He hears some sounds and is very surprised because of this. Gangram immediately grabs his sword and says that they must prepare because demons are approaching them. He takes a fighting stance and sees many monsters coming towards him from all sides. Yorn begins to release flames, which hits several monsters at once. One of these monsters dispels these flames with a swing of his sword. Linny runs and creates water bubbles that stop several monsters. Gangram strikes with his sword and loudly says that it was not in vain that he took up their training after all. He thinks that there are many monsters, but in terms of strength they are not so dangerous. He hears shots, turns around with a joyful expression on his face and wonders, is this Baum? The monster who took her form shoots at him with a rifle. Gangram blocks the bullet with his sword and thinks it's just a demonic shadow. The monster is surprised when he notices something. She fires a shot, but he quickly runs towards her and dodges this shot. The system notifies you that the perfect accuracy ability is activated. Gangram turns around and notices a bullet that has changed its trajectory and is quickly flying towards him. He bends down, but the bullet grazed his shoulder and the system warns that the attacks are on target, no matter what. Gangram looks at the monsters who took the form of Yun Baum and Jael and thinks that he doesn't like facing them like this. He looks at them with a small smile after thinking about it. Gangram deflects arrows and bullets with his sword and thinks that there is only one kind of monster in the room of fused skeletons. The system notifies you about this, that these monsters are Shadow Thief class initial human rank. Ability copies people's skills. He thinks that this is a monster capable of copying the appearance and skills of those who fall into the realm of demons, but is not able to repeat the personality and beliefs. Jael fires many arrows with one shot from his bow. Gangram was very surprised by this and thinks that the real Jael would not shoot so chaotically. He runs very quickly towards these monsters, dodges all the shots and swings his sword. One of the arrows hits his hand, with which he protects his head and says that, however, thanks to this, it will be easier for him to cope. He strikes very hard with his sword and cuts the Jael monster. He turns around and looks at the arrows, which disappear after he killed this monster. Gangram smiles as blood flows from the wound on his face and says that the arrows are also disappearing. The monster in the form of Baum looks at him and takes aim with his weapon. Many different weapons created from energy appear in the air. and the system notifies that it is using the execution command skill. Gangram looks at this monster and thinks that it looks like Bomb has a new skill. He stands still and wonders, what should he do? He wouldn't be able to reach her with his sword, but she was too close to dodge her attack. The skill of stealth will not help him because she will find him. How many shots can he block? Suddenly someone shoots and hits this monster in the head. The real Bomb, who looks out from the ceiling, loudly calls for the master, and Gangram immediately turns to her. Tihun extends his hand to him and, with a worried expression on his face, loudly says that he should climb in with them. He helps him up to this floor and asks if he is injured. Concerned Bomb asks the master how he feels. Gangram holds his stomach wound and says that he's fine, it's not that bad. She asks, with a worried expression on her face, maybe she should at least put on a bandage. Gangram says no need, he has everything he needs. He puts his sword back into his inventory, looks around and wants to say something about this place. Bomb says that she feels like the room next to this one is a prison. Gangram asks what does she mean. He remembers what he saw in the system window and asks, is Sua there? After some time in the prison, which was next to the room, Gangram was very surprised when he saw something in this room. He sees a very badly injured Sua sitting against the wall and calling her name. He opens the door and calls her name very loudly. Bomb runs after him and asks what happened there. Gangram approaches Sua and looks at her with a very scared expression on his face. Bomb remembers what happened and says that it seems that he himself understood. But the monsters in this demon realm, the monsters are able to copy their skills. They dealt with them, but as soon as I heard the sounds of the drum, new monsters appeared. On the second day they found out by chance. After that, she pauses and plunges into memories. The monster in the form of Sua hits Jaol on the shoulder very hard, and a worried Bomb calls her sister's name. Tihun stands in front of the other two shadows, turns to them and says that they must hold out a little longer. He can handle them. He is surprised when he notices something strange with the monsters. Bomb in the present says that the damage that a real person receives is transferred to the shadows. Her wounds are not from monsters. Gangram sits in front of Sua and opens a bottle of medicine. He looks at her seriously and says that it seems to him that she did this to herself. Bomb agrees and says that she said that this is the only and best solution to save herself. None of them could cope with her shadow. She wipes her tears and says that she said she would take care of everything once the others left. She asks the master to stop her. She is too kind, so he should help her. Gangram continues to pour healing potions on her wounds and thinks that this is not kindness, she is just crazy. When another potion ran out, he threw it to the ground. Bomb sits next to him, covers her face with her hands, and says that she knows that they should not have abandoned her. I had to come up with something else. Gangram thinks about it. How could ordinary people stop a madman like her? He takes out and opens a new bottle of potion. After that, he strokes Bomb's head with his free hand. He asks did she find her plaque? She calmed down a little, but continues to cry, agrees and says that Sua, Jaol and Johan have not yet found theirs. Sua makes noises as she begins to come to her senses, and a worried Bomb immediately calls her name. Gangram pours the potion and surprises her by calling her name and asking if she could leave them alone. He says with a serious expression that he needs to talk to her. Some time later, Sua lies on the floor while her wounds are healed with potions. She slowly opens her eyes and is very surprised when she notices Gangram, who is healing her with potions. Sua immediately grabs his hand and asks what he is doing. Gangram says he needs to talk to her. She agrees and says he should take the medicine away. She reaches for the dagger that lies next to her and says that if she is healed. She pauses and stabs the dagger hard into her leg, much to Gangram's surprise. She cries, her body shaking due to pain, and says that the others will be in danger. She raises her hand with the sword while the other holds his hand and is about to say something. Gangram lets go of the medicine bottle, stops its blow by grabbing the blade with his hand and says with a serious expression that he said they needed to talk. Sua was very surprised by what he did. She tries to remove his hand from the dagger blade and loudly says that he should let it go. Gangram says she must let go first. They still have a little time before the next drum beat. Sua sits silently for a few seconds and thinks about it. After that they threw this dagger aside. She says with a sad expression that he said he won't come. Gangram says he didn't say that. Being late does not mean not coming. She sighs because of this, and he asks why did she do this. She would have been able to defeat her own shadow. Sua refuses and says she couldn't get over it. He seems to know why she couldn't handle it. He can see the window of her destiny. Gangram looks at her and the system notifies that the fate detector ability has been activated. He was very surprised by what he saw in this window of fate. He clenches his teeth very hard and wonders why everything has changed so much. In the system window, it is written that the ability Bloodthirstiness of the class Ghostly Fate is tertiary rank. The power of the skill increases upon contact with human blood. The more often a skill is used, the stronger the addiction to it becomes. If the opponent loses due to this skill, it will affect karma. Ability Severity of Karma, tertiary rank Divine Destiny class. The more karma points the user receives, the more the basic characteristics will increase. Gangram looks at this and wonders why she got these two skills now. In his past life it appeared later. This is somewhat reminiscent of his destiny-stealing skill and Nam Yujun's killing impulse. The more often this skill is used, the more power it gains. But she now has fewer bandages of fused skeletons than in her previous life. He looks at the bandage on one of her hands and thinks that means she didn't use those skills. But on the other hand, her shadow has no reason not to use this skill. Gangram says that it seems like her shadow must have gotten stronger every time it appeared. He thinks that a monster that can calmly use the Bloodthirst skill is definitely something to be wary of. They sit in front of each other for a few seconds and think about all this. Sua attracts his attention with her hand and says that he should leave her and take the others away. Gangram asks, what will happen to her then? She covers her face with her hand and says that it doesn't matter anymore. He puts his hand on her shoulder, calls her by name and says that she should look at him. He notices Sua closing her eyes with a very tired expression on her face and calling her name loudly. He continues to hold her and asks loudly if she is going to die here. Sua opens her eyes, calls his name and says that she's just feeling a little sleepy. She lay down on the ground and says that she will leave here right after they all leave this place. Gangram is very worried about her and looks at her with a very sad face. Some time later, several people walk by this place, notice him and call him by different names. Johann says it's great that he's here. Gangram looks for something in his pocket, agrees and says that he managed to find them thanks to this. He takes out a cross and hands it to him. Johann took it, thanked him for it and said that he already thought that he would never see it again. But he is even more pleased that they are all together again. He was very worried when they were apart, but they managed to meet, despite the fact that they went into different rooms. Gangram asks if he didn't come here with Gajun. Johann refuses and says that they could not find anyone. Tihun says that if they knew that the starting point changes when entering at the same time, they would have waited for them. Johann, with a very worried expression on his face, remembers something and says that he will go and see how Sua is doing. Gangram stops him and says that she had just fallen asleep. He gave her medicine so she should feel better. Johann asks, does that mean he saw her? Immediately afterwards they all look down with very sad expressions on their faces. The Yun sisters try to cheer everyone up and say that she is confident that they will get out soon. Of course, because now the master is with them. Tihun says it sure sounds cool, but if his shadow is here, it won't be easy for them. Baum says that for now the shadow won't be stronger than the original like Sua was. Jael says that her shadow is very similar to her. Does she think it all depends on what skills they have? Gajun walks around Gangram and looks at it from different angles. He notices this and asks what's wrong with him. Gajun, with a slightly flushed expression on his face, points to something and says that he has a nice decoration on his neck. He removes his collar with his finger, and Gangram is embarrassed by this and tries to hide it. Yoon's sisters are very worried about this and ask the master what's wrong with his neck. Does this mean he will die? Gangram says he should just leave before everything happens. It's already been a day since he got here. Bom pulls his sister and Taehyun by the arms and loudly says that they need to deal with this now. Johan immediately agrees with her. Gangram follows them and tells them that they must stop. It will be better if those who have just arrived rest, and those who were here. Jaeol turns to him and says that he is actually injured. She pokes her finger into his wound, causing him to feel great pain, and says that he should stay here and watch. If people from other regions come, then someone must protect Sua. Johan says that he thinks it would be better to leave 2 people. Gajun immediately says that he wants to stay with him because he is a little tired. Johan agrees to this and says that he relies on him. Gangram wants to stop them, but they don't listen and leave. They close the door behind them, and one of them says that they need to synchronize the card in advance. After they leave, Gangram sits down and asks, since they are here together, can he answer his question? Gajun asks what he wants to know. Gangram asks why they chose this particular room to settle down. He asks with a serious expression why they left Sua in prison. Gajun says she chose this place herself. She said that perhaps her shadow would become weaker because there were no plants here. Gangram thinks the metal axe is destroying trees. He's right, this place will weaken Sua because her element is wood. But leaving someone in such a deplorable state on a cold stone floor. He doesn't finish the thought and looks at the floor. Gajun asks with a small smile, are these all the questions he had? He goes towards him and says that since he is the main character, then perhaps he should ask something more important. They both look at each other with serious expressions and remain silent. Gangram looks at him and asks why he sent him this message. Gajun says he can do it when he wants. This means that he still guessed that it was him. Gangram asks if he will answer his question or not. Gajun says that they can't be without the main character. So they got worried because he hadn't come here for 4 days. He sits down on a stone next to him and asks if he has gone crazy. Gangram looks away with a thoughtful expression on his face and is silent. He covers his face with his hand and says that, however, because of him, he knew that Sua was in danger. Gajun agrees and says that he knew he would appreciate it. Gangram was surprised when he thought about this and asked how he ended up with a messenger of space and time. For an intern, this is already too much expense. Gajun winks and says it's a secret. However, if he wants to find out, he could. Gangram is very embarrassed by this and says that he does not need it. Gajun asks, however, he really heard something interesting. Doesn't he want to know it? Gangram turns away from him and refuses. Gajun lay down on a stone and says that he thinks that he would already know, since he is a regressor. But it doesn't seem like he foresaw this situation. He wonders what has changed. He thinks that he has really become too strong. Gangram turns to him and says that if he's going to keep saying this nonsense, it better be. Gajun interrupts him by humming a tune and asking if he really wants to lose his body parts. He shakes his hand and asks how much karma he has accumulated. After that, they are silent for several seconds. Gangram looks at him and asks what is he talking about. Gajun says that he understood everything perfectly. The location of the bandages of fused skeletons changes depending on what the person was doing. The more bad a person has done, the more life-threatening the location of the bandage. He raises his hands. There were 2 bracelets around his wrists, and he says that he also did a lot of things, so they want to deprive him of his writing. The more karma a person accumulates, the stronger the shadow will be. Gangram asks, so what does he mean? Gajun says with a happy expression that he is just having fun. He hugs his neck and says that it's funny that he did so many bad things despite always trying to seem good. He wonders what will happen next. He wonders what happened in his past life. He gets up very quickly and calls his name. There are finger marks on Gajun's neck, and he says with a crazy expression that he is very curious. What is he really like? Gangram is a little surprised by this and looks at him intently. He thought about it and says that he is a criminal. Gajun laughed very loudly, hitting himself on the legs and saying that this is impossible. Does he seriously think that he will believe this nonsense? Of course, something like this would be quite original. However, most often the main characters are victims. He would really like to meet his shadow. He is sure that it is very strong. He hides a lot, so? Gangram sits with his head in his hands and says that he should shut up. Gajun smiles and says that he will shut up if he tells him an interesting story. He looks at him with a joyful expression on his face and asks, maybe something from a past life? Or a prediction for the future? Gangram sighs, looks away and says that he already said. He is not what he thinks he is. Gajun says that then he can start guessing, and he will answer whether he is right or wrong. Gangram is very tired of his behavior and says that they can just talk about his childhood. At the same time, someone is watching them through the system window. Anavi says that they are glad that they were given the opportunity to observe the realm of demons. Is he also worried about Gangram? Gongju says of course it is. Sungti goes to them and speaks to the team leader and says that he brought the files he asked for. The more they try to understand Gangram, the more mysterious it becomes. Gongju turns to him and asks what did he find. Sungti looks at what he brought and thinks about it. He hands it to him and says that there is nothing there. He has no criminal record. He is an ordinary person. The only thing that is noteworthy is that he lost his parents at a young age, so he was adopted by a shaman. But he did not recognize any god, and after that Gangram led a very ordinary life. What did he do if he has so much karma? Anavi asks if he killed someone. If the case is not solved and the culprit is not found, then there will be no criminal record. Gongju says he doesn't think so. Taking 1 or 2 lives will not affect karma that much. He must have killed at least 100 people. This news greatly surprised his colleagues. He says that he can't even imagine what he did, but nothing good comes to mind. Sungti was very surprised by this and asked loudly, that is, he wants to attract someone like that to their side. Gongju turns to him, calls his name and asks him why he thinks the director included the karma part in the last demon realm. Sungti asks, is this to check what kind of karma they have and weed out those who have serious problems? Gongju asks if it was that easy. Wouldn't they have done it in the first stage? They even took on an assassin as a trainee. They needed to know the identities. Isn't the Destiny Protection Agency putting the trainees' lives in danger to make them stronger? Since when are they the good guys? Risk everything and test your karma in the final room. It means making them prove that they are not just criminals. Several people enter the room where Gajun and Gangram were sitting, and one of them loudly says that these are guys from another zone. A crowd of people runs towards them, and one of them loudly says that they must kill all the stronger ones, unless they want to fight the same shadows again. They immediately begin to fight against the people who entered this room. 6 days after the opening of the room of fused skeletons, the blades that come out of the bandage dig into Bomb's ear. She screams due to severe pain and grabs her ear, and Gangram notices this. The blades from the Tihun bandage dig into his fingers, and he quietly says that it hurts a lot. Gangram turns to him and asks if the 2 of them are okay. He agrees and says that everything is fine. Gangram takes out 2 syringes, one of which he hands over to Tihun, and says that the bleeding is pretty serious, so he should take it and inject himself with some. It wouldn't be cool if it didn't heal properly, so they shouldn't use healing agents. They should leave the room quickly. He sticks a syringe into Bomb's ear, and she says they haven't found his and Sua's plaques yet, so they can't leave. Gangram says that then they should rest until they feel the painkiller has worked. He'll check the next room, and they should be here. Bomb tells the master that there is nothing complicated about this. Tihun agrees and says they can go together. Gangram tells Linny that he should also stay and look after them. It will return before the next drum beat. Some time later, he walks through the room where papers were scattered on the floor. He looks around and thinks that he would have already found everything if the signs were in the same places as in his previous life. He notices something that attracts his attention. Gangram sees the monsters and thinks they are the remaining shadows. The number of times they avoided the shadows increased as the days passed. The monsters run towards him, and he immediately gets into a fighting stance. The enemies still recover, so there is no point in wasting energy on a room that has already been examined. Gangram engages these monsters and fights several shadows. He continues to fight, and the gods who are watching him say that this is amazing. He seems to be very strong. He copes with everyone with ease. It scares. I wonder how strong his shadow would be. Gangram defeats another monster and thinks that it worries him too. He still hadn't seen his shadow. He is very surprised when he notices something in this room. He notices a sign on one of the shelves and wonders, is this it? He comes closer and examines it and thinks that it is the same color that Sua had in his previous life. Suddenly the barrier that surrounded the sign disappears, and this surprises him. A plaque protected by a barrier, only the owner can touch it. He picks it up and the system notifies that he has received his plaque. Gangram squeezes this sign very tightly and grins because of it. He looks at it with a very sad expression on his face and says nothing. He puts it in his pocket and thinks that he is lucky for all sorts of horrors. The system notifies that he has fulfilled all the conditions. The training will end as soon as he leaves with the sign. Gangram turns around and thinks that there is someone here. The system notifies that he activates the skill heightened senses. He hears someone saying that he should get up quickly because there is someone outside. He has to protect her, so where does he go? Gangram recognizes this voice and opens the door, surprising several people and greeting them. People calmed down when they saw him and called him by name. The girl says that they didn't see him, he probably came late. Gangram agrees and says that she guessed right. The girl asks if he wants to go with them. Other people agree and say they believe him. It would be cool if he went with them. Gangram is confused by this and says that he was actually looking for Sua's plaque. Maybe one of them saw this. The guy sitting on the box asks, is she still here? Didn't someone say they saw this? Gangram asks who was it. The other guy says that however, he has already left. He calls Sangwon and says that this person was from his team. Does anyone know where they are now? Gangwon looks at him for a few seconds and doesn't say anything. After that, he throws him some kind of scroll and says that he only knows which team they are on. Everyone looks at him with joyful faces and says that he is great. Gangram thanks him and looks at the map he threw to him. The system notifies that the frequency of checks in the demon realm has been changed. It returns map and says that they were all seriously damaged. What happened to them? Did they encounter guys from other zones? The guy sitting on the floor says it's not like that. It was a shadow. It was one monster, but very strong. Because of the mention of this shadow, everyone became very sad, and he says that this monster simply distinguished itself from all the other shadows. Every time they discovered a body, everything became completely different. Other people say he even vomited. It was the monster who behaved like something unknown when he died. For sure, it was terrible. After all this, the monster hung over the corpse. This shadow could use the skill of an already dead person. Gangram realized that it was his shadow and was very surprised because of this, but did not say anything. Someone in this room says that this did not happen on the first day they entered. But then it appeared. Sangwon agrees and says it happened around the fourth day. Surprisingly, this monster has bandages around its neck and all its limbs, so it can't be confused. He was very surprised when he realized and saw something. He looks at Gangram with a very surprised expression on his face and asks when did he come to this room. Immediately after that he turned to him and looked at him with a frightening gaze. Sangwon reaches for his arm and says that it looks like he has bandages on both ankles and on his wrists too. Gangram abruptly pulled his hand away from him, and this surprised him very much. Sangwon looks at him with a shocked expression. calls his name and asks him to show his neck. He raises his voice a lot and asks if he can't hear him or what. Concerned and incomprehensible people look at them and ask what happened. Does he mean that that shadow belongs to Gangram? This is impossible. Sangwon looks at them and says loudly that you can't be sure. He points to Gangram and says loudly that everything fits in time, and this shadow is as strong as him. And this shadow has bandages all over its body. Everything is just like his. Gangram doesn't say anything and just looks at him. People worried about this begin to quietly discuss it among themselves. One of the guys goes to him, calls him by name and asks if they can see his neck. They need it so there is no misunderstanding. Gangram points to his neck and says that even if he does have a bandage around his neck, it doesn't prove that it is his shadow. Sangwon is very worried and loudly says that he should shut up and show his neck. They must see everything for themselves. People who stand next to them ask, is it really so difficult for him to show his neck? The shadow is not his, right? So what is he afraid of? Does he really have this ability too? Gangram doesn't respond to this and Sangwon asks why he's silent. People are very afraid because of this and say that it really could be his shadow. Then the reason for his power is because he killed others and stole their abilities. One guy says loudly that they should all calm down. They don't even let him say a word. How can he then answer? He is shaking very much out of fear and tells Gangram that everything is fine. They're all just scared. If he just shows them his neck. The system notifies that the person alone's skill is activated. Gangram becomes invisible. This surprised them very much, and they loudly ask, where did he go? They notice that the door to this room opens and immediately understand what happened. They all stand still for a few seconds and look at it. They all take out their weapons, run towards this door, and loudly say that they must follow him. They need to capture the real Gangram. They run away from this room and loudly say that he could not have gone far. Gangram, who remained standing in the room, sighs and his skill stops working. He thinks that he knew that everything would turn out this way in the end. People in his past life reacted the same way when they learned about his ability. But he didn't think that everything would happen so quickly. Maybe they feel betrayed because they thought he was a good person. Then how would they feel when they learned about this skill? Will they be able to accept it as well as in their previous life? Or would they be disappointed in him because he didn't tell them? He remembers Sua saying that she likes how he doesn't take the easy way out even when he has the opportunity. Gangram wonders what she would think in this life if she found out that he used Steel Fate. Sometime later, he returns to his room and Bomb and Taehyun notice him, and she says that they were worried about him. He was gone for a long time. Gangram holds out the map in his hand and says that he met some people and found out where the Sua tablet is. This news made them very happy. Taehyun looks at this map and says that this is great news. They should go look for it. Gangram starts running in the right direction and says that they should follow him. He thinks that he will tell everything after they get out of the demon realm. Some time later, the three of them come to a place where trees grow. Taehyun looks around and asks if they went outside. Bomb looks the other way and says that it is somewhat reminiscent of an indoor garden, although the size here is amazing. Gangram with a serious expression says that they don't have time for this. They have to start searching. Immediately after that they started looking for the tablet in this garden, and the gods say that this place is really huge. It will take them a lot of time to search. It would be much more interesting if they met the guys from the second zone. What will Yoon Bomb and Jang Taehyun say when they find out the whole truth about him? This is an intriguing question. It looks like it will be very funny. They don't have to reveal all the cards. It's much more fun when people find out about everything. Bomb, who climbed the tree, loudly says that she found the Sua sign. She turns to the others and says that it was in the hollow. Taehyun and Gangram say she did a good job. It's time for them to return. Suddenly, they all hear the loud sounds of a drum, which really surprised them, and Bomb asks if they are already here. She jumps to the ground. They all take out their weapons and Taehyun says the intervals are getting shorter. In this garden, two shadows appear that go towards them. He notices this and says that at least there aren't that many of these monsters. They need to figure it out quickly and come back. Tihan is very surprised when he notices something else. He sees another shadow appear and his attention is drawn to the red bandage on his left arm. Liquid flies out of this shadow's leg and he realizes that it is Sua's shadow. He is very surprised by what he sees in front of him. He wonders why her shadow cannot stand on its feet. He slowly walks towards this shadow while his comrades fight against their shadows. Gangram immediately remembers what Sua did to weaken her shadow and wonders if she is still hurting herself with every drum beat. He raises the sword above his head and quietly says that he should quickly go to her. Another shadow appears behind Sua's back and uses the healing hand skill. Gangram was very surprised by this and wondered, is this the shadow of Father Johann? The system notifies you about this, that the energy of the earth is concentrated in the surrounding area. The skill's effects have been enhanced due to its environmental effects. Sua's shadow activates the tree leaf method skill. The energy of the earth is concentrated in the surrounding area. The skill's effects have been enhanced due to its environmental effects. The shadow releases many tree roots that fly towards the people in this garden. Gangram dodged this attack, turns to the others and loudly says with a worried expression that they should run away from here now. He lands on the ground and with a blow of his sword cuts the roots that were flying at him. He fights off these roots and cuts it with his sword, but one of the many blows from the root knocks the sword out of his hand, and Baum loudly calls for the master. Gangram turns to them and loudly asks what are they doing here? They must run away. She loudly warns him that something is behind him, and at the same moment a root pierces right through his leg. Because of this attack, he fell to the ground, and Sua's shadow moves on the roots towards him. Having gotten close enough, this monster immediately begins to reach out with its hand to his wounded leg. The shadow with an evil expression on his face smiles as he does this, but Gangram raises his head in time and looks at it. He quickly takes out his sword and delivers several blows, with which he cuts the roots, but the shadow dodges this. He makes a sharp jerk and strikes with his sword, and Sua's shadow deftly jumps over him. He turns to this monster with a worried expression and notices something. A shadow sits in the place where his blood remains and the system notifies about it. That the bloodlust ability is activated. Shadow Thief monster stats have been increased. Tihan runs to him and loudly asks how he is feeling. Gangram breathes heavily and looks at the piece of root that is stuck in his leg and says that everything is fine with him and he doesn't have to worry. Johann approaches the shadows that were injured, uses his ability and heals his comrades. Baum asks with a frightened face, can shadows really heal? Gangram says that apparently it is, if you have the necessary skills. Tihan creates a spear of energy and says that then they will have to get rid of Father Johann's shadow first. Gangram stops him by grabbing his shoulder, looks at the roots that surround this shadow and says that it is too late. He cuts the roots that fly at them and says that he has an idea. They don't need to fight, but just run away. Baum wants to object, but immediately falls silent. Tihan and Gangram push away the shadows that were heading towards them with their attacks, and he loudly says that they cannot defeat them. After some time in prison, Johann uses his magic to heal Gangram's leg. He stops this process by thanking him and saying that everything is in order now. Johann is very worried about finding out about his shadow and asks what they should do now. Maybe he should hurt himself like Sua did. Gangram immediately stops him and tells him that he doesn't need to do this. It seems to him that the best thing they can do is get out of here as soon as possible. Shadows can only copy those who are here, and others too. Everyone, after hearing this, immediately turns to him and looks in surprise. Baum asks what about the Sua sign? He wouldn't let her do it on her own, would he? Sua grinned and said it was the right decision. Gangram interrupts her by saying that she should shut up. He stands in front of her and says that he is going to defeat her shadow. Sua was very surprised by what he just said and looks at him. Gangram looks at her and asks, so, will she go with him? Sua looks at him silently and thinks about what he is saying. She takes her dagger, which lies next to her, and says that she does not doubt his abilities. However, Gangram realized what she was going to do and stopped her and told her that she should stop. She doesn't need to do this. He takes the dagger from her hand and says that he has a plan, so she should forget about it. Sua looks at him with a blank expression and asks, what is this plan? Sometime later in the garden where there are 4 shadows, Bomb's shadow begins to disappear and Sua is surprised when he notices it. Tihan's shadow also begins to disappear, and this makes her even more worried. All the shadows except her have disappeared, and she looks around. Gangram goes to this garden and says that it seems that everyone is safe and sound. Their shadows have already disappeared. He looks at the monster in this garden and says that he should have made Gajun leave here too, but he doesn't know where he is. Sua takes out a dagger and says that she will kill herself if something happens. Tihan immediately snatches this dagger from her hand, refuses and asks where she is pulling out all these weapons from. He takes out his sword and says she doesn't need to do this. He knows that she thinks he can't win. Sua looks at him silently for a few seconds and thinks about it. She grabs his sleeve and says that she believes him. A small smile appears on her face and she says that they will get out of here together. Gangram was surprised by what she said and silently looks at her. They both smile and he nods in agreement. He turns invisible due to using the skill alone, runs towards the monster, and says that he will finish this as quickly as he can. Gangram runs very quickly towards the monster in the garden while he is under invisibility. Sua's shadow is surprised when he notices that he has disappeared. With a worried look, she begins to look around to find him. Gangram appears in front of her and strikes with his sword unexpectedly. He immediately uses invisibility again and runs out of the way. He walks behind him and stabs Sua's shadow on the shoulder with his sword. She turns around, but Gangram immediately uses invisibility. She begins to create many roots that she gathers around herself. He strikes with his sword, but the shadow immediately stops his attack with roots. He looks at the monster with a calm expression and thinks that he knew that she used the tree leaf method to protect herself. He begins to run away in the other direction from this shadow, but the monster immediately sends roots in his direction. She misses with her attacks, and Gangram dodges and the system notifies that he used achievement points. Agility increases to level 30. He moves very quickly between the roots and dodges all attacks from this monster. He stops when he notices several roots pointing in his direction. He bounces to the side and lands on one of the large roots. Sua's shadow walks along these roots towards him with a sword in his hand. This monster stops in front of him and looks at him with a small smile. A fiery energy appears in front of Gangram, and he says with a smile that it makes him nervous. The system notifies that the flame control skill is activated. Yorn appears next to him, and the system notifies that the firebomb skill has been activated. Fire appears in front of the dragon's face, which he concentrates. Yorn releases this flame into the shadow of Sua, and this greatly surprises her. This fire engulfs this monster, and it stands still. Gangram runs very quickly and strikes with his sword, engulfed in fire. Sua's shadow falls down as her body, and the roots created by her ability burn. Gangram jumps to the ground while the monster lies on the burning roots. He turns around with a joyful expression on his face and says that he has dealt with the shadow. Something flies at him, and he thinks that now he needs to wait for it to disappear and pick up the Sua plaque. Gangram reflects this with a wave of his sword and wonders, are these people from the second zone? Several people walk in their direction and say that's where he was. Everything is on fire here. He must wait a little. Gangram will also try to escape. The guy with a joyful expression on his face says that they can get 500 million for his head. Gangram says that this is a good reward. Are they from the first zone? The guy looks at him with an evil smile and says that he is sure that he does not want to fight here. Everything will be different than last time. Gangram has a worried expression on his face and wonders, is this bloodlust? Was there anyone like that in the first zone? Someone comes down the stairs and calls his name. What he saw surprised Gangram very much, and he silently looks at it. Gajun points his sword at him and says that they haven't seen each other for a long time. Gangram gets into a fighting stance and asks, what is this? Why does he need this? Why did he switch to the first zone? Gajun laughs at this and says that he could at least pretend to be surprised. He points his finger at the monster and says that this is what is more interesting. How did he deal with her? This is Sua's shadow, right? There are much simpler options, but he, as usual, chose the difficult path like a true protagonist. He looks at it with a crazy expression on his face and says that this is very funny. Gangram is very surprised when Gajun hits one of the guys who was with him. He looks at him as blood flies near him and says that he is completely different from him. The guy holds on to the wound on his shoulder and loudly asks why he did this. Gajun smiles and says that he doesn't like these ideas with two main characters. He puts the sword on his shoulder and says that maybe he should have been some kind of minor character and would be some kind of double spy. Not bad idea. And that messenger of space and time was also part of the plan. Gangram points his sword in his direction and says that this is nonsense. He felt his bloodlust even before he arrived. Gajun looks at him with an angry expression and asks, is this true? The guys who came with him look at him with very worried expressions on their faces. He turns around, unsheathes his second sword, and says that even if Sua harmed herself for this mission, he was still going to fight him. This is not at all what the main character would do. Gangram looks at him and asks, so what does this mean? Gajun stands with his back to him and says that he is on his side. Three guys run to him and call him a traitor. Together they begin to fight these guys and easily defeat them. Gajun calls Gangram's name and he immediately turns to him. He holds one of the guys by the throat and uses the decomposition ability. He kills this guy and throws him to the ground at his feet. This greatly surprised Gangram and frightened the other guys, who were lying wounded on the ground. Gajun says with a happy expression that he must finish things properly if he wants to use his skills. Gangram looks at him with a surprised expression and asks where did he hear that from. Gajun goes to him and tells him that he shouldn't dwell on nonsense. He wants to see how he uses the Stealing Fate skill. Gangram gets angry at him and loudly says that there is no way he will do this. He never. He does not have time to finish because they notice the dark energy that appears next to them. They notice a shadow appearing next to them and Gajun says that he was hoping it would be fun. Either way, it looks like it's just one shadow. The monster releases a very strong energy, defeats one of the guys, and Gajun blocks this attack. He looks at this shadow with a joyful expression and wants to say something about it. Gangram's shadow runs towards him very quickly and with one very strong blow of his sword throws him back very hard. Gajun crashes very hard into the wall and coughs up blood from the damage he took. Gangram looks at this with a very surprised expression on his face and wonders, did Gajun win with one attack? Despite the fact that nothing was visible because of the smoke, he can definitely say that it is his shadow. He begins to panic very much about what is happening, and Gajun loudly calls his name and tells him that he should not be distracted. He must steal destiny. How else is he going to defeat his own shadow? The shadow points a finger at him and Gangram thinks he was right. He remembers what the people in the room said about him and thinks that he needs to steal his destiny before the shadow does. He releases magical energy from his hand and the system notifies that the ability to steal fate is activated, stealing all destinies within the zone. Gangram comes between Gajun and his shadow and thinks that he must destroy it. The system notifies him that he is spending achievement points to increase his characteristics. Mana, endurance, agility, and sensitivity are increased to the 30th level, and strength to the 29th level. Gangram stands in a fighting stance in front of his shadow and thinks that he will succeed. The system notifies that the combat instinct skill is activated. He thinks that his shadow cannot kill him, because it will die if it does so. A sight of energy appears in front of his eye, and the system notifies that a warning has been received from the combat instinct. The enemy is too strong, no weaknesses have been discovered. Gangram was very surprised by this and wondered if this monster really has no weaknesses. His senses are too heightened due to his fighting instinct. The shadow approaches him and slowly raises his sword above his head. It strikes very sharply with the sword, and Gangram realizes that he cannot move. He blocks this blow with his sword, and a large amount of energy is released due to this very strong attack. The system notifies that this is a shadow thief of primary human rank. Ability: copies people's skills. The shadow with an evil smile reaches out to him with his hand, grabs his head, and the system notifies that the shadow is copying the enemy's abilities and is trying to copy the original form. They are enveloped in a very strong dark energy, and the excited Gajun loudly calls his name. Gangram wonders, is this really his shadow? He plunges into memories of his childhood, when he sat on his mother's lap. His father asks loudly, "What do you mean they don't know? How can they call themselves a doctor?" The doctor asks him to calm down. After that they got into the car and drove somewhere. They come to a place where there are poles with masks. The shaman says that she told them that he would feel better only when he let God into his body. Mom asks, "Aren't there other options?" The shaman says that unfortunately there is no such thing. The God who wants to take possession of him is too powerful. Gangram hears the voice of a God who tells this child that he must accept him. He looks up and asks Mom, "What does this mean?" God says this is his destiny. His mother says that this means that he will become a messenger of God. Gangram says he will do it then. His mother looks at him with a worried expression and says that if he accepts God, he will have to spend his whole life under his orders. He will be forced to give up all his dreams and cannot do anything without God's permission. Does he want this? Gangram begins to shake his head as a sign of refusal. His parents hug him and his mom says they will take care of everything. After that there was an accident, and people say that then there was a terrible car accident when they were returning home. The state of the parents' bodies horrified the imagination, but the child did not seem to be harmed at all. Even though he rejected God, he allowed the child to live. Gangram stands in front of the bowl of incense and looks at it. He is very surprised by what he sees in front of him. In front of him stands his adult shadow, which says that these are the first people who died because of him. Many pictures appear around them, and the shadow says that it seems that he has accumulated a lot of karma after everything that happened. Many paintings of people who died in his past life begin to fall to the ground and blood appears, which rises in this space. Gangram is an adult again, and the shadow says that he must look at the fruits of his labors. First his parents died, then all the members of the sect were killed by the flying tigers, and everyone who entered the realm of demons also disappeared. The shadow, which becomes more like him, grabs him by the shoulders with an angry expression on his face and says that all this happened because he rejected God. The shadow hugs Gangram and asks if he still doesn't want to accept him. Then there is a way to save his teammates without taking him. This creature raises its hand and says that everything is simple. It pushes him and tells him that he must die here for this. Gangram begins to sink to the bottom, and God tells this child that he still has the opportunity to make the right choice. He must fall into eternal sleep, and then he can prevent future karma. Gangram wonders, did he say future karma? He closes his eyes and thinks that if he dies here, then none of the flying tigers will die. God stands on the shore while he drowns and says that it would be wise of him. He will like it here because it is much better here. Gangram mentally agrees with him and thinks that this is pretty good. But does it really have to be that way? After everything he's done, God says that he must forget about the past. Gangram wonders, should he forget everything? He still sees the faces of those who died before his eyes. He needs to atone for his sins. He begins to resist, and God says that, however, they are now alive. Gangram wonders, what about Sua? He starts to get up and thinks that he didn't have time to make sure she was safe. He gets ashore and thinks that he needs her to leave the demon realm. God looks at him and asks why he makes the wrong choice over and over again. He should just die. Gangram turns around and sees many red hands grabbing him. God says this is the only good he is capable of. Gangram continues to resist and loudly says that even if he has to die, he will see Sua out of here first. He runs to his sword stuck in the ground, and the god creates many tentacles that are directed towards him and asks, is he going to save her? That's just an excuse. Sua doesn't even want him to live. Gangram is very surprised by this and holds on to his sword while the god says that he is sure that she does not want to see him here. He has no doubt that she regrets meeting him. He approaches Gangram, who is sitting on the ground and holding his sword, and says that it seems that she would be glad if he died. Gangram looks at the sword with a sad expression and says that even if this is the case, he needs to get out of here. He sticks his sword out of the ground, and God says that only pain awaits him there. Gangram yanks his sword away and says he doesn't care. God says he will regret it. Gangram turns to him and says that there is no way this will happen. God asks why he does this. Gangram strikes quickly with his sword and says that it is because he gave her his word. He loudly says that they must get out of here together and destroys this space with a blow of his sword. Sua calls his name loudly and tells him that he must get up. She helps him and pulls him out of the dark energy that has taken over him. Gangram gets out with a surprised expression and looks forward. He looks around and Sua has a happy expression on her face and says that she is very happy about this. The gods who watch over him say that they already thought he was dead. He should at least thank him. She still tried to save him from the shadow. Gangram smiles and thinks that he was mistaken after all. She was waiting for him. Sua holds his hand and asks if he can get up. Gangram says he's fine. He is about to thank her, but stops. He is very surprised because he sees something in front of him. His vision is focused on the fact that Sua's hand is missing, and she says that he scared her so much. The drums began to beat and shadows appeared in front of the door. He was swallowed up by his own shadow. Gajun also tried to stop everything that was happening. Gangram grabs her amputated arm and loudly asks why she didn't leave. She feels very much pain because of this and tells him about it. Gangram recovered a little from the shock, let her go, looks down and asks why she stayed. Sua says she already told him. He was being consumed by his own shadow, and Gajun was trying to help him. Gangram clenches his teeth very hard and asks where is he now. Sua looks away and says that he left as soon as time ran out and said that he couldn't write a novel if he was left without hands. Gangram gets very angry and loudly says that she should have left with him. Sua is also angry about this and says that he was being consumed by his own shadow. How could she leave him like that? Gangram angers her further by loudly saying that this would be the smartest thing to do. Sua says loudly that it's too late. Suddenly she fell silent and blood began to flow from her nose. She falls to the ground because she runs out of strength. Gangram is very shocked by this and calls her by name. The gods who watch over him say that he is a sick idiot. Why is he yelling at the one who saved him? She held on to the sword even though she had lost her arm. She is not an ordinary person at all. This girl struck a shadow, lost consciousness, was able to wake up and continue the attack. Gangram silently looks at her and is about to help her up. He looks at her palm, which was bruised from the sword, and thinks that he is a stupid idiot. Why did he decide to take his anger out on her? He remembers something and says that now is not the time for this. He begins to lift the body of Sua, who has passed out. Gangram sighs and says that it looks like at least it's over now. He doesn't notice the energy that is gathering behind him, picks up Sua and says that they need to get out of here. He stops when he notices the voice he heard in space earlier, which says that he must return. He won't hurt him. Gangram turns back sharply with a frightened expression on his face. His shadow uses the beast creation skill and says that however, if he decides to leave, he will die right here. Gangram looks at what is happening with great surprise and wonders. Is this not the end yet? He grits his teeth hard and thinks that this time he needs to be sure that he kills it. He calls Linny and Yorn, who immediately come running to him. Gangram puts Sua on the ground and says that they must protect her. He strikes very hard with his sword at the beast from the shadows that was running towards him and kills it with one blow. He continues to attack beasts from the shadows, which continue to be activated by the Create Beast skill. Gangrem stops in front of his shadow and says that if he attacks him, he himself will suffer. A healing effect appears around the shadow, and the system notifies that the regeneration ability is activated. Gangrem was very tense because of what he had just seen. He gets into a fighting stance and thinks that he even stole the healing skill. The shadow releases energy from his hand and asks this child why he is resisting. Why does he strive to worsen his karma? Why is he trying to do something for which he will not be praised anyway? Gangrem, with a very serious expression on his face, defeats the beasts created from the shadows. The shadow releases a large amount of energy, which turns into claws to attack. Sewer regains consciousness, looks at what is happening, loudly calls his name, and says that she asks him to survive. Gangrem grips his sword very tightly, which he holds above his head. He delivers a very strong blow with his sword, which dissipates the energy, and the system notifies that the power has been increased to the 30th level. All characteristics have reached the 30th level. He fulfilled all the conditions for the second sign. The dark energy around him begins to disappear and a bright light appears. The system notifies that the zodiac is unlocked. Gangrem looks at this with a surprised and happy expression and thinks that this is a zodiac skill. With this, he will be able to overcome the shadow. The shadow asks this child, is he still clinging to hope? Gangrem looks at the images created from the energy in front of him and thinks that this voice does not stop, despite the fact that time has stopped. A voice tells this poor child that he can look at how pathetic his zodiac is. The system notifies that his zodiac sign is rat. He has access to a new ability related to the zodiac. The voice says that this is the weakest of the zodiac signs. This skill will do nothing to help him become stronger. Gangrem points his hand towards the image of energy and says that his zodiac sign was predestined. He is trying his best to get rid of the misfortune that has befallen him. A rat created from energy appears behind him, and the system notifies him that he has received the ability to squeak from a cornered mouse. Gangrem smiles and says that, however, even this way he can handle it. The shadow in front of him is created by many beasts created by his ability, and the voice says that he cannot escape with such a weak ability. Gangrem calmly puts his hands to his sides and looks at the animals that are about to attack him. All these animals bite him in different parts of the body, and he screams, but still continues to smile. A voice asks him why he is smiling. The system notifies that his health is below 10%. Activating the squeak ability of a cornered mouse, a very strong energy emanates from Gangrem, which throws all the animals away from him. He goes forward and the system notifies about it. That the ability of the squeak of a cornered mouse, human destiny, primary rank, allowed to grow stronger in the face of danger. A huge penalty will be imposed for using the ability. Gangrem very quickly rushes to the attack and says that the rat, although the weakest animal of the zodiac, he stabs with his sword and says loudly that, however, there is nothing more terrible when cornered than a rat. He finishes the blow, but the shadow jumps to the side and dodges the blow. This shadow looks at him worriedly and tells the child that he will die anyway. The system notifies that the combat instinct skill is activated. Gangrem quickly runs towards this monster and loudly says that he has already told him that even at the cost of his life, he will help Sua get out of here. He strikes very hard and fast with his sword and hits the hand of this monster. Blood begins to flow from the shadow's wound and it screams loudly due to pain. It immediately creates a hand of energy and says that he must understand that his efforts will lead to nothing. It turns into a huge dragon, and the system notifies that the dragon transformation ability is activated. The system notifies that the rat is afraid of the dragon. Gangrem looks at this with great surprise and fear. The shadow says that even a person who had the abilities of a dragon was powerless against it and died. The shadow moves very quickly towards him and asks, so why does he then think that he will be able to defeat him with the rat? Gangram covers his face with his hand and says that he just chose the most beautiful thing. He takes the sword out of his inventory and says that he was just expecting a dragon to appear here. The system notifies that the blade of generational dominance, a blade that dragons fear. The head of an ancient winged lizard is depicted on the hilt of the sword. Gangram thinks that the blade of generational dominance is used to fight the dragon. Energy appears around this sword, and he says that, in this situation, it is better to be a rat. The system notifies that a dragon has been detected. The blade's attack power has increased significantly. Gangram swings his sword and says that because it is a dragon cutting blade, he strikes very hard with his sword and pierces this dragon. After this attack, Gangram falls to the ground and the system notifies that the cry of the cornered mouse has been cancelled. The defeated dragon falls to the ground and the severed head falls to the ground. The system notifies that he receives an additional reward for defeating an opponent who is stronger than him. Fate class upgraded from Human Fate secondary rank to Ghost Fate tertiary rank. Gangram lies on the ground next to his sword, which is stuck into the ground. He feels very strong pain, and the voice again calls him a child and asks if he wants to survive. If so, then he must accept it, and he will grant him life. Gangram's ears are bleeding, and he thinks that he knew that these were his hallucinations, considering that he still hears that voice. He tries to raise his hand, but begins to lose consciousness and thinks that this means he will die like this. If he knew that he would go through all this and still die in the end. Will Sua be able to get out of here? She calls his name loudly as he passes out and thinks that it seems like she won't have to worry about him anymore, so she'll be fine. Sua was able to get up and runs towards him with the animals. Gangram plunges into his consciousness, where the shaman pats him on the head and tells him that it is time to return. Immediately afterwards, he wakes up in a hospital room. He stands up very abruptly with a serious expression on his face. He sees through the open door Sua, who is walking along the corridor of this hospital. Gangram immediately gets up from the bed and runs towards her and calls her name. He fell to the ground in front of the transparent Sua, who stopped in front of him. He lifts his head and looks at her and says he's so glad she's okay. He looks at the frightening face of Sua with a very surprised expression, who turns her head and looks at him with empty eyes. Her head continues to spin, and Gangram, shocked by what happened, wonders why he is seeing all this again. The system notifies that he is again on the brink due to his karma. He thinks, is all this because he was close to the border? He plunges into memories. The girl pulls little Gangram by the hand, throws him out into the corridor, and loudly says that they can no longer look after him. As soon as he appeared, terrible things began to happen to them. Maybe they should leave it here. Their children had an accident, and now they are in the hospital. Everything happened because he refuses to accept God. God asks how long will he run away. He must accept it. It's all because of him. The reason for their suffering is because he rejects him. Some time later, several people bring Gangram to some place and lead him through the gate. He passes through the barrier that was placed at the entrance. He is very surprised when he notices something strange. Gangram, with a surprised expression on his face, notices that the voices have died down. A girl comes out to him and attracts his attention by asking if he is Gangram. She gives off a strong energy that he immediately notices, and she says her name is Coh Wajong. He looks at her with a worried expression and says nothing. She looks at him with a very serious expression and says nothing for several seconds. The people who brought him here look away, and Wajong asks what's wrong with his face. She turns to these people and says that they asked for a ritual so that he would accept God. But it seems to her that he doesn't want it. Gangram was very surprised when he heard this and looks at her. He turns away and silently looks down. Wajong sits down in front of him and says that if he doesn't want to, then he doesn't have to do it. However, the god who wants to get him is too powerful for her to protect him. So he should come here and be her student until he learns to defend himself. Gangram tries to pull away the hand she is holding and loudly refuses to do so. He continues to try to break free with a worried look on his face and says that she might get hurt too. Hwajong smiles, sighs, and says that he underestimates her. She holds both his hands and says that God is with her and will protect her, so he need not worry. He might be in pain now. She hopes that someday everything will change. She says with a kind smile that he will be surrounded by good people, and he will definitely become happy. Gangram thinks that she began a ritual to suppress divine energy, and while he lived with her, he stopped seeing spirits. But when a person creates karma and approaches the border, he begins to see what he should not and hear what he should not. And then, when he finally crosses the border, he will die. There is an unknown person behind this border who says that he must come closer. He reaches out his hand and tells this child that he must come even closer. Some time later, Gangram slowly opens his eyes in the hospital room. He sees Yorn and Linny standing next to him and asks, "Is this a dream?" The girl doctor who stands next to him tells him that this is not a dream. He finally woke up a month later. He should try not to move too much, because he might faint. Gangram asks what's wrong with Sua now. The girl turns to him with a kind smile and says that everything is fine with her. He stood up, stroked Linny, and said that this makes him happy. The girl says that if he waits a little, she will call someone. Moreover, she allows him to recover. Gangram, in addition to this girl, sees several spirits in this room. He thinks the test results were good. Awakened ones heal much better than ordinary people. What he cared about was the window of his destiny. He sees that he has a ghostly fate, a tertiary rank, and wonders what this is. He raised 2 levels at a time. All because he changed fate with Sua. But how did they even get out of the demon realm? Gongju enters his room with Sungti and calls Gangram by name. He asks with a serious expression why he didn't tell them that he was able to steal other people's destinies. Gangram sighs with a displeased expression on his face and thinks that's why he did it. Gongju asks if he will tell why he hid this from them. A small smile appears on his face at this question, and he says that it is because he was worried about a reaction like his. Gongju adjusts his glasses and says that he is calm now. Has he ever killed anyone to steal their destiny? Gangram says he didn't do it. Gongju asks, what if it's not intentional? He looks at the leader and is silent for several seconds. He looks away from them and says that he did it for self-defense. And they all signed a contract upon entry, agreeing that injury and death could occur due to conflict between trainees or monsters. He didn't kill anyone without reason. He notices that Sungti is looking at him with an angry expression on her face and thinks that after all, murder is murder. That's what he seems to be thinking about. This is probably a normal reaction. Gangram asks what will happen to him. He raises his head and asks, will he be punished? Gongju surprises the two by congratulating him and saying that he got the highest marks among the trainees. Sungti asks the manager with a worried expression if he really wants to hire such a dangerous person. Gongju doesn't turn to him and tells him to shut up. He holds out his hand and says he has an offer for him. Gangram asks what kind of offer is this. Gongju says that he is offering him an official position in the second team of the Destiny Protection Agency. Gangram was very surprised by what he had just heard and immediately changed his mind about shaking his hand. He says that he asks to forgive him, but he has no desire to accept this offer. Gongju was very shocked that he was refused and looks at him with incomprehension. Ganti gets very angry about this and asks loudly if he even realizes how great an opportunity this is. Gongju looks at him with a very angry expression and slowly says his name to stop him. Ganti calmed down and stepped aside, and he says that he understands that they too unexpectedly offered this to someone who had just come to his senses. He hands over a business card and says that he should rest for a few days and then contact them. He is sure that he will want to see his family and freshen up. Gangram took the business card and says that he is not eager to work for. He doesn't have time to finish because Gongju leaves and says that when he is discharged, he must go to the training room. There's something he should know before he leaves the training center. He snaps his fingers, winks with a joyful expression on his face, and says that they will see each other again. They left, and Gangram wonders, is he being offered a job at a Destiny Protection Agency? However, given that they were so insistent in suggesting it, they should not be aware of its purpose. If they find out, they will do anything to try to make him work for them. Some time later, Gangram got dressed, leaves the room, and thinks that first he needs to find Sua. He enters the room, looks around, and calls her by name. He sees that she is lying on the bed in this room. He comes closer to her and looks at her severed hand. Gangram feels guilty about this and looks at her with a sad expression on his face. He closes his eyes and turns his head away. He was very surprised that a system window appeared in front of him, in which it was written that an aura of murder had been detected in the fate of Sua. Gangram looks at this with a shocked expression and asks, how is this possible? In his previous life, he doesn't remember her having such strong death energy. Unexpectedly, an item flies out of his inventory and the system notifies about it. That the Compass of Fate item is activated. This item is enhanced by the power of the barrier. Because of this, Gangram begins to see many scenes related to Sua and feels that he has a very bad headache. He sees Sua coughing up blood, and someone says that Gangram will not come here. A girl whose face is not visible due to interference stands in front of her and says that he doesn't even know that she is here. She sits in front of Sua and says that she doesn't understand her. He abandoned her, so why is she trying to die for him? Gangram wonders if this is the future. The unknown girl says that it doesn't matter what she does. He will die anyway. Sua looks at her with a very angry expression and says that she won't even dare lay a finger on him. Gangram looks at what is happening with a very surprised expression on his face and wonders what is happening here. An unknown girl kills Sua and says that in that case they should say goodbye. Gangram looks at this with a very surprised expression on his face and cannot say anything. He falls to the floor from the shock of what he saw and wonders, in a place he doesn't know about, will Sua die again because of him? He reaches for the compass, which is hanging in the air, and thinks that this cannot be. Gangram grabs this compass and thinks that you can't rely on the compass alone. We need to find out what's going on. Immediately after this, he goes back in time to when the accident happened with his parents, who say that he should run away from here. He immediately turns to these voices and little Gangram loudly says that he cannot do this. He cries while he looks at his mom and says that he will get her out of here. She calls him by name and says that he cannot help alone. There must be adults nearby. He must call them here. She looks at him with a small smile so that he doesn't worry and asks, he can do this, right? Gangram immediately agrees, runs away and says loudly that he will find someone. They have to wait for it. He runs past himself, out of the present, to call for help. Gangram turns, reaches out to him and says that he shouldn't leave. His hand passed over the shoulder of his little self, who continued to run, loudly calling for help and asking if anyone was here. He begs for help for his parents. Gangram looks at the remnants of energy that remain on his hand and slowly disappear. He is gritting his teeth very hard because of what happened here. He turns around, looks at the burning car, and hears his parents say that they are lucky that he left after all. What will he do? He will be left completely alone. It seems like everything will be fine with him. Immediately afterwards, the car with his parents inside explodes. Gangram covers his face with the hand he is holding the compass with, begins to cry and thinks that they knew that the machine would soon explode. He hears loud sounds after the explosion and is very surprised by what he sees in front of him. He sees Beek Young, who cut this car in half with a blow of her sword. She looks at it with a serious expression and says nothing. The system notifies you that the Compass of Fate item is being disabled. Gangram returns to the ward and wonders, was it Beek Young? He is very shocked by what he just saw and wonders what just happened. Wasn't it just a normal accident? Did Beek Young set this all up? He is shaking very much because of anger and wonders if it turns out that she is also involved in the murder of Sua in the future that he just saw. Gangram is very worried and tense because of everything he just saw. He is knocked out of his thoughts by the fact that Sua makes sounds in his sleep, and this distracts him from it. She continues to sleep with a calm face, and Gangram leaves the room and closes the door behind her. He puts the compass in his pocket and notices a man walking towards him and attracting his attention by saying that she knew he was here. Yongniu walks towards him with flowers in his hands and greets him with a joyful expression. Gangram, with a blank expression on his face, takes these flowers, which she hands to him, and calls her by name and calls her the leader of the group. Yongniu continues to smile and asks if he remembered her. She came to visit him, but did not find him in his room. She looks aside and says he cares about Sua a lot. As soon as I woke up, I immediately went to visit her. It seemed to her that she, too, was worried about him. She was greatly surprised when she saw them coming out of the demon realm. She lost her arm, her whole body was wounded, but at the same time she was able to pull it out. It must have been very difficult. Yongniu continues to smile and says that she doesn't want to disturb the two of them. She will leave soon, but he needs to tell him something. Work at a Destiny Protection Agency. In the first team, not in the second. Gangram immediately says that he is not going to work for. He doesn't have time to finish because Yongniu, with a serious expression on his face, says that if he agrees, she will return Sua's hand. Gangram was very surprised by what she just said. He wants to ask, but Yongniu interrupts him and says that she cannot say this, but she will be able to return her hand. But this will only happen when he joins them. Gangram wonders if she can really return Sua's hand just like that. There are omnipotent gods who are able to regenerate body parts in a couple of years, but now such people simply do not exist. He knows ways to return her hand using objects, but it will take a lot of time. But if he gets a job at an agency, then all his plans will fail. He asks how long he will have to work. Yongniu asks with a joyful expression, probably a year. But the longer the better. Usually, candidates are required to start work immediately, but she may give him a couple of months of grace period. If only he would answer her right now. Gangram stands in front of her for a few seconds and silently considers this. He looks down with a serious expression on his face and considers this proposal. He is about to respond to this proposal, but is interrupted by Sua, who came out of her room and says that he does not agree. He's not going to work for a protection agency. Gangram was very surprised by this and called her by name. Sua asks, what is this nonsense? Is she using her hand to manipulate him? Only she didn't offer this to her. Yongniu abruptly snatches the bouquet and asks, maybe in that case, she will also join. She winks at her and says that she will be happy about it. Sua throws away this bouquet, refuses and says that they have different views on this. Yongniu immediately takes out his 2 business cards and says it's such a shame. She gives these business cards to them and says that they should call if they change their minds. After that she leaves, and they remain and silently look at her. Sua turns and says that if he was only going to say yes because of her hand, he might as well forget about it. It's just her problem. Gangram stands silently for a few seconds and thinks about it. He says that he wanted to agree not because of her hand. He doesn't have time to finish because Sua turns him towards him and calls him by name. She sighs and says that he doesn't know how to lie. Gangram grabs her hand, moves her away from him and asks why she did that. Why did she sacrifice her hand for him? She and she are not that close and have only known each other for a couple of months. Sua was embarrassed by this and says that he was in danger. She does not have time to finish because Gangram says that she must answer his question. Sua thinks about this, silently looks down for a few seconds and collects her thoughts and says that she doesn't know this. Gangram squeezes the business card tightly in his hand and asks what's the point. Sua says she's just taking care of him. At first she thought about him because he helped her, he protected them, although he pretended that this was not so, and he himself endured the trials of fate alone. even in the room of sawn-up skeletons. She is sorry that he was in danger because of her. She looks up and says that, to be honest, that's not the only reason. She understands that it may seem strange, but she feels as if she has known him for a very long time. Gangram was surprised by what she said and silently looks at her. He closes his eyes and thinks for a long time. Sua looks down and says that when she saw that he was in danger, she acted on instinct. It's weird, isn't it? They have only known each other for a couple of months. Gangram wonders if everything that happened really affects her that much. If everyone has memories of their past lives stored in their subconscious. Sua from a past life says that she is also going to start a sect. He will fight with them, won't he? In the present, she says that she hopes that they can continue to work together in the future. Can't they stay friends and keep in touch? Gangram looks at her holding onto his sleeve and wonders how he can save her. If she was by his side, everything could turn out exactly the same as in their previous life. Or she might even be killed by Beak Young like his parents. But what happens if he leaves? Sua calls him by name because he doesn't say anything. Gangram does not listen to her and wonders what if this path leads to the future that the compass of fate showed. What if in a place that he doesn't know about, and until he understands where it is and she dies again because of him? He clenches his teeth very hard and thinks that he cannot allow this to happen. He agrees to her proposal and Sua is immediately happy about it. She says that she has heard some rumors. They say that like-minded hunters also create sects, and it seems they are called awakened hunters. How about joining them? Gangram turns away and says that if he wants it. Sua says it's great with a happy expression. She will not leave him until he agrees. Besides, once he gets in, he can't get out whenever he wants, okay? Gangram smiles and thinks that this reminds him of the past. In a past life, Harang, holding a scroll, annoys him by saying that he asked to withdraw the application citing lack of ability, but Sua opposed it. He asked to withdraw the application, citing health concerns, but Sua opposed it. He asked to withdraw the application, citing the fact that he wanted to develop independently, but Sua. Gangram, with a serious expression on his face, calls her name and tells her to shut up. In present time, he thinks with a smile that even when he said that he would leave because of remorse, she rejected it. He says that he is sure that he will not succeed. Johan peeks around the corner, notices him and calls out to him loudly. He cries with a joyful expression on his face as he runs towards him and loudly says that he has woken up. They shake hands and Gangram says that they haven't seen each other for a long time. Johan says that he is very glad to meet him. He came here alone because he didn't know if he had come to his senses, but he was sure that the others would also like to see each other. Sua, with a joyful expression on her face, wants to fold her hands in front of her, but forgets that she has lost her hand and says that it is true. Everyone must be really looking forward to it. Gangram is very confused by what he just saw and looks at her with a shocked expression on his face. Sua says that she will go into the room, change clothes, and come down to them. She leaves with a happy expression on her face and asks will he look after him? Johan agrees to this and looks at a very sad Gangram. He doesn't listen to them, keeps looking at the floor and thinks that he needs to find a solution as soon as possible. They go towards the elevator and Johan says that this is where they belong. They get into the elevator, and he says that there is a training center downstairs where they were. He is sure that everyone is already tired of waiting. They were all very worried. It was the same when he was pulled out of the demon realm very wounded, and when the question of his unique strength arose, he asks him for forgiveness. He probably doesn't feel comfortable talking about it, right? Gangram says that's not true. Everything is fine. He wonders, come to think of it, his abilities are now known to others, right? He leans his elbows and asks, more importantly, is he okay with this? I mean, he hid the fact that he had these abilities. Johan, with a kind smile, says that of course this is so. He knows what a good person he is. Gangram was surprised by what he said and silently looks at him. At the same time in the training center, Tihun sits at the same table with the Yoon sisters and says that first you need to enter this demon realm, and he doesn't finish speaking because he notices Gangram and calls him. Yoon's sisters also notice him and call him master. Bom was very happy to see him and immediately hugged him. She cries with joy and says that they were very worried that he might die. Tihun says that he is very glad that he woke up. Gangram asks why are they still here. A whole month has passed. Jaeol and Tihun simultaneously say that everything is clear. They were waiting for him. Gangram thinks that they all treat him the same, even after learning about his abilities. He says they should have left with the others. Bom gets angry and refuses and says that she won't even say hello to them anymore. They are very angry, even after they saw everything. Gangram asks, did something happen? Tihun is embarrassed and is about to say something, but the angry Jaeol loudly says that it's all about these people. They tell him what happened 2 weeks ago. People say that now gradually more and more people are leaving the hospital. He is glad that everyone is on the mend. But as for Gangram, they say he is still unconscious. Sangwon says it's great. There is no point in releasing a freak like him into society. He's better off dead. Bom gets angry at what he said and walks towards him and asks if he can repeat what he just said. Sangwon turns to her and asks if that's true. Gangram is actually a killer. She grabs him by the clothes, but he still says that he is sure that he is leading them around with him only in order to one day steal their power. Bom immediately throws this freak to the ground and hits his back very hard on the floor. This attack causes him to cough up blood due to severe damage. She looks at him with a very angry expression and says that he has no right to talk about him like that. Tihun runs to them and asks her what happened here. Sangwon says loudly that he is going to call the killer what he is. They probably also heard what ability he was hiding. Tihun heard this and became very angry at what he said. He approaches him and says that if he were a murderer, he would be dead. Sangwon loudly asks what did he say. Tihun crouches next to him and with an angry expression says that he knows how strong Gangram is. So, he could easily cope with someone like him. Jaeol turns to the rest of the people and says that first of all, if the master was truly a murderer, everyone present here should have died in the room of uttered sins of the demon realm. Poisoning food would be a piece of cake. One of the guys walks towards them and says that he still used his powers. He helps Sangwon up and says that his whole body was covered in stripes. He doesn't think he's a bad guy either, but it's true that he gives you goosebumps. Sangwon points his finger at them and loudly says that he is right. They also become idiots. They don't even know what he's thinking. Nothing good would come of hanging out with a guy like this. All these people leave with him and Johan asks if they are all right. The guy who helps Sangwon walk says that he asks him to stop arguing with others. Jaeol says that after all this time he received help from them. Gangram looks down and thinks that something like this happened. Bom says with a determined expression that he doesn't have to worry about it. No matter what they say, they will still follow him. She is still faithful to him. Gangram asks what does she mean. Tihun asks if he should join them anyway, right? Jaeol says they are going to practice together before opening day. Gangram, with a calm expression on his face, thinks that for sure there will be an opening day. Since the day of awakening, people have been able to awaken their 4 pillars and 8 characteristics. And after the opening day, the awakened ones are able to progress many times faster. Opening day marks the opening of the first great demon realm. It is more complex and dangerous than ordinary demon realms, but many awakened ones died in the raid for huge rewards and a better reputation. Bom says with a joyful expression that they are also going to raid the normal demon realm and go on a mission to destroy magical beasts. They all look at him with smiles and she asks the master. He will also train with them, right? Gangram looks at them with a smile. But suddenly his expression changes and he thinks that his goal is to raid the first great demon kingdom before the others. He greatly upset and shocked them by refusing the offer. Gangram, with a calm expression on his face, says that he has slightly different plans. He thinks it's because he has to find this person without anyone finding out. Everyone looks at him worriedly, and he says that he still needs to do something. Jael starts crying and asks, does this mean he wants to stop communicating with them? Johan asks, what's the matter? Baum grabs his hands and asks, that's not true, right? Gangram says they got it all wrong. He really needs to do something. Jael immediately took out her phone and said that she understood. They will wait for him. When will he finish his business? Gangram looks away and says he doesn't know that. Jael continues to look at his phone and says that this is their group chat. He must stay there. Everyone immediately gave her a thumbs up for what she did. She immediately wrote in this chat that the master was here, and everyone started sending happy emoticons. Sua sent an emoji and wrote that she was going to do this when she woke up but forgot. Gangram sighs with a small smile and says that he understood them. Some time later, when he came to the Anavi office, she asks will he really be okay. He doesn't have God's revelation. Perhaps it would be better to join a destiny protection agency. Gangram bows to her and says that he is grateful for the invitation, but still refuses. The little man who brought him coffee was very surprised by this. Gangram thinks the revelation is like a quest. While shamans borrow the power of the gods, they cannot ignore the revelation of the god, which is their commandment. The goal of the gods is to make their names sound everywhere. The more famous a shaman is, the more his divine title extends, so the gods grant tasks and rewards to help the shaman in his development. Gangram goes outside and thinks that since he doesn't have God's protection, he has a lot to prepare for. He should hurry up with this. He remembers his 7-branch sword and thinks that first he needs to get a suitable weapon. After some time, he came to a remote building where a blacksmith works. Gangram enters this building and asks if there is anyone here. The blacksmith turns to him, agrees, and says that he should wait a little. She goes to him and says that it's been a long time since clients have gone so far into the countryside, especially so young. Gangram with a smile calls her Han Roya and says that he came to her. He thinks that fortunately she has not yet been dragged to the Destiny Protection Agency. She was surprised by this and asked if he came to her. Gangram thinks that she is a relative of the master artisan who was declared a cultural treasure for his golden hands, the granddaughter of the late Han Chul. His ghost appears next to him and tells him that he must hurry. He is here to open the window of fate for his granddaughter, right? Gangram says that he heard that Master Han Chul had a successor. The ghost cries because of this and says that she doesn't even really earn money, although she is in the prime of life and works every day, forging iron for nothing. He is very sad about this. Han Roya laughed because he said and says that she is still far from reaching her grandfather's level of skill. Gangram immediately says that this is not true. He looks at the system window and says that he needs her abilities. The system notifies that Han Roy has a tertiary daimonic rank, fire attribute. Fire ability of a tertiary dragon rank blacksmith. Fire that can help create objects filled with mana. When working with metal, it is possible to adjust the characteristics. It is also possible to use elements that have the same rank as the ability. Han Roy is very surprised by what she sees in the system window in front of her. She reads the document he gave and asks if these are all the conditions. She will have to work for Gangram and not get involved with the Destiny Protection Agency. Did he give her money, help her with awakening, and with obtaining property? Just think, he is ready to pay her that much every month. Gangram says that he helped her with awakening, but the possession is not his doing. He takes out a 7-branch sword and says that now he wants to ask her to melt down and repair this sword. She must follow the divine revelation, develop until he comes for her again. Han Roya immediately agrees with him. She smiles and says that, by the way, there is a cemetery on the mountain. She would like to visit her grandfather before work. Isn't he against it? Gangram wonders, does she want to go to the cemetery at a time like this? The ghostly energy near the Noviu graves is very strong, so animals are attracted to it. He says that it is night, so there is a higher chance of beasts appearing, so he will go with her. Han Roya was very scared because of this and asked if he said animals. Gangram says that most likely there will be no strong animals. She calmed down and said it was good. It's not far to go here. Some time later, they walk together and she says that it is here. Gangram looks towards the forge and thinks that it is really close. He remembers that Han Chul's ghost asked him who he was. Why does he constantly look into his granddaughter's store? Wait, he's awakened. That's great. He should take his granddaughter to the Destiny Protection Agency so that she can too. Gangram in the present thinks that he heard Han Chul's voices clearly in this life, so he thought it was because of his karma. But maybe it's just because they're near his grave. In this world, the wireless connection is weak, so he cannot hear the voices of the gods so well. In sanctuaries or at the graves of the dead, it becomes easier to communicate with the necessary gods. Han Roya sits in front of her grandfather's grave and says that she is grateful that he is with her. Gangram asks if she can't communicate with him without going to his grave. She's obsessed now. She turns to him and says that she only feels like she really talks to him when she comes here. It's not far from here, so she often comes in the morning. Gangram looks up and asks, "It hasn't been long since he died, right?" Han Roya agrees and says that not even half a year has passed. He thinks that when people die, their souls leave their bodies, but their spirit remains. The theft of fate occurs by stealing information from this spirit, and if you try to steal fate from a sick body, it will require additional mana. It's been about 4 months. Then perhaps he could use mana to steal his destiny. Of course, even if it is possible, he cannot dig up his grave in front of a family member. Han Roy gets up and asks if it's time for them to go back. Gangram doesn't pay attention to her because he notices something and stares intently. He takes out a weapon from his inventory, calls her name and tells her that she must stand behind him. They see many frightening eyes looking at them. Han Roy gets scared and says that there are really animals there. Gangram says that since the cemetery is so close, he needs to get her an amulet for protection. If she wants to focus on her skills. A large crowd of evil animals begins to run towards them, and he runs towards them with a sword in his hands. Someone who was nearby uses amulets, which they fill with their energy. All these amulets are attached to the animals that ran out of the forest. Immediately after this, all these animals fall to the ground due to strong energy. Gangram was very surprised by this and realizes that it is a talisman. The animals turn to the side and scream very loudly while something strange happens to their bodies. An unknown person waves a wand with many bells, emitting very strong energy. A masked man walks towards these beasts, which he killed with the help of talismans. He stops and asks, wasn't he taught that it was dangerous to be near such graves? To think he brought a newbie with him. Han Roy wants to say something, but Gangram stops her and asks if she can come back first and wait for him. He and the man look at each other with serious expressions and say nothing. Gangram goes to him and asks why he came here. The guy takes off his mask and asks, does that mean he remembers his voice? It's been more than 5 years since they last saw each other. He calls him by name and says that they have not seen each other for a long time. Gangram remembers that this is Doyan, whom he knew in a past life. He sighs with a small smile and says that it hasn't been that long. He remembers the past and says that they only saw each other once during training. Doyan points his wand at him and asks if he recognized him, then why didn't he say anything? Gangram says that it was not a very good situation to say hello then. About the same as now. Did he follow him on the orders of the agency, or did he want to? Doyan asks, and this is his first question. He clutches the wand tightly in his hand and says that he thought he would ask about his mother first. Gangram was very surprised by what he just said. He asks if the teacher is doing well. Doyan looks at the puddle. Doyan looks down and gathers his strength to talk about his mother. He raises his head and says with a serious expression that she died 2 years ago. Gangram sadly thinks it turns out that the teacher has died after all. Just like in a past life, she left several years before awakening. He asks why he didn't invite him to the funeral. He doesn't have time to finish because Doyeon grabs him and asks if he said funeral. He gets very angry and says loudly that he left home himself. So for what reason did he have to call him? They reminisce about their childhood, when Hwajung introduced him and said that he was her son. And this boy's name is Seo Gangram. Doyeon is older, so you should be nicer to him, okay? This is because from today Gangram will be her Paksu. Doyeon is very surprised by this and asks what does this mean. After some time in the room, he asks his mother why she decided this. She said that she would not transfer the status of a shaman. Hwajung says he's right, she doesn't want this, because living under the orders of God is quite unpleasant. She doesn't want his life to be like this. Doyeon, concerned about this, asks who he is. Hwajung says that a very powerful God has come for him, but the boy is not eager to accept him. That's why she wants to help him. Doyeon doesn't understand this and asks if he doesn't want to accept God. Is he really as arrogant as the others? Hwajung looks at him with a slightly sad face as he says that he can accept this God. He is proud of her and wants to be like her. Gangram sits next to the room where they are talking and listens to this with a sad expression on his face. Doyeon says it's not that big of a problem. Next few days, Gangram wanted to make friends with him, brought cut fruits and asks if he wants to have a snack together. Doyeon pushes him to drop the fruit and loudly refuses it. They are sitting in the same room and Gangram asks if he can help him with his homework. Doyeon turns to him with a displeased face and asks if he can't see that he's busy. He must do it himself. They walk down the street together and Gangram calls his name. But Doyeon turns around and also calls his name. He says that they should pretend that they don't know each other. Gangram is upset by what he said and looks down as he walks away. Sometime after the incident, he returns home alone. His attention is drawn to the fact that someone is calling a cultist shaman. Several guys go to Doyeon and one of them asks. He told him that he was being haunted by a ghost, so he shouldn't come close here, right? He looks at these guys and says that he was just passing by. One of the guys says that's great, then he should pay to get in. Doyeon asks with a calm face why he has to pay. The guy grabs him by the shirt, is about to hit him and says it's because he said so. He is stopped by someone grabbing his arm with small hands. Gangram is shaking out of fear, but still loudly says that they must let his brother go. Doyeon looks at him with a dissatisfied expression on his face, and the guy who is holding him asks if he doesn't do this, then what will happen? Sometime after the two of them were beaten and their belongings scattered, Doyeon gets up and says that he said that he should leave him alone. So why does he pester him then? Gangram wipes his tears and says loudly that he wanted to help him. The only ones who are unlucky around him all the time are he and his mother. Doyeon looks at him and thinks about everything that happened. He starts to get up and wipes the blood from his face. He helps Gangram to her feet and says that he shouldn't call her that. She is only his mother. He continues to cry while his hand is held and Doyeon says that he should call her teacher. If he calls her that, then he will be his brother. Gangram was very happy, stopped crying and looked at him silently. After that they walked back, holding hands. Gangram thinks that, as the teacher said, his life was gradually getting better. After this, a couple of rituals of suppressing ancestors happened. Hwajung, in shaman's clothing, performed this ritual while Gangram sat on his knees in front of her. As the ritual continued, the voice of God became quieter. This God asks if he really thinks that moving away from him will change his fate. He will bring misfortune to everyone around him. Gangram looks down, denies it, and says that from now on everything will be different. After that he stopped hearing the voice of God. He didn't see ghosts either, and he stopped having nightmares. The thought that he too could be happy stupefied him. An old man named Lee Hyun drags Gangram by his clothes and loudly asks Hwajung, "Is she still messing with this guy?" She has already performed the ritual of suppressing the ancestors so many times, but it still continues to bring misfortune. If she doesn't get rid of him, then even she won't be able to escape it. Hwajung comes out of the building, throws a fan at him and loudly says that if he opens his mouth one more time, she will rip out his tongue. She says with a very angry face that he will never dare to say that again. Some time later, Gangram helps Do-yeon go, who asks why she loves him more than him, her own son. Why did God want to possess him and does not pay attention to him? Gangram looks at him and says that he seems to have drunk too much. He needs to go inside. Do-yeon asks if he can still let God in. He cries with a sad face and says that he wishes that the God who came for him would choose him. Gangram looks at him in surprise as he falls and says that he wishes he could be in his place. Do-yeon fell face down on the floor and immediately fell asleep. Gangram looks at him and wonders how he could say that, despite knowing how he lived because of this God. He looks at him with a sad face for a few seconds and says nothing. He put Do-yeon to bed and thinks that this behavior didn't surprise him much. If his desire for God was the same as his desire to renounce it. Gangram sits on the floor and says that it was probably unbearable for him to live like this. He thinks that he brought a lot of trouble to his brother. If he, who brings only suffering, leaves the house, he leaves and thinks that in this case they will finally find happiness. Currently, Do-yeon continues to hold Gangram's clothes while he remains silent with a sad face. He asks why is he standing with his arms folded now? He can get rid of him easily, right? He's the best intern. Is he trying to be gentle with him? Gangram turns his head to the side and says that he doesn't want to fight him. Do-yeon lets him go and tells him that he shouldn't look down on him because he's not the same person he used to be. He is about to leave and with an angry expression on his face says that God has come for him. After that he leaves and Gangram stands still and looks at him. He wonders how this happened. In his past life, the only reason they could get along was because he was weak. He goes into a flashback where Do-yeon says that he can't stand idly by and watch how weak he is. But even so, why is he still jealous of him? Gangram thinks that he should tell his brother something. Some time later, Do-yeon is in the building knocking on his office. He goes inside and Young-Nyu asks if he met Seo Gangram. He agrees and she asks if he agreed to join. Do-yeon says that he refused and said that he was busy with something. However, he did not specify what exactly. Young-Nyu points her fingers at him and says that she was already hoping that he could persuade him. Do-yeon says that he is not that close to him. She remembers what happened before and asks, but didn't he spend a lot of money on him? How much did that ointment cost? She says with a cheerful expression that he should try to convince him again. Do-yeon says he doesn't think he'll change his mind. Young-Nyu types something on the keyboard in the system window and asks if maybe if they explore the demon realm together, then he will let his guard down. Immediately after this, a system window appeared in front of Do-yeon, which he immediately noticed. Young-Nyu looks at him and says that she is asking him to do this because she really wants him on their team. Some time later, a system window appears in front of Gangram, in which it is written that a request has been sent for his help to study the demonic kingdom. He thanks you for this invitation with a smile and clicks on the system window. Young-Nyu wrote to him through the system window that her team was asking for his help. Gangram thinks that now he has a reason to meet him. Some time later, he stands near the building and leans his back against the wall. He thinks that the destroyed city is an unexplored realm of demons. In the system window, it is written on behalf of the head of the first team of Seoul, Young-Nyu. It says that she asks Gangram for help in exploring the demon realm. Target, Ruined City, First-Class Demon Realm. Despite its low class, this kingdom was not explored due to the huge number of missing hunters. She asks him, who has successfully passed through more than one kingdom, to provide them with all possible assistance. Kang Do-yeon from their team will help him. Gangram thinks that not all regress people are able to remember everything. All that remained in his memory were large kingdoms and those where something terrible happened. But here are the low-ranking ones. He notices a stopped car and thinks that since it is not particularly well known, then most likely it was studied without any problems. It turns out that it's not just about the kingdom, but they also need him to talk to him. Doyeon begins to get out of the car he just arrived in. Someone also gets out of the car, waves his hand, and tells Gangram that he arrived early enough. He goes to him along with Anavi, who waves her hand and says that she will go to this kingdom with them. He was surprised when he saw her and called her by name. They shake hands, and she says that they haven't seen each other for a long time. Gangram says he was not warned that she would be traveling with them. Anavi starts laughing with a slightly embarrassed face and remembers what happened before. Gongju is very surprised by what he was told and asks if Gangram and Doyeon really know each other. There is no way they can give him to the first team. Anavi smiles and says that she thought it would be difficult for the two of them, so she went. Doyeon has already guessed everything and says that she was sent to lure him away. Anavi was very embarrassed by this and says that she will not deny it, however. Gangram doesn't listen to her and says that they will discuss this later. He thinks it's good that she can restrain her brother. After that, the three of them went to a building that was surrounded by a fence with talismans. Gangram asks since they are here, he won't pretend, right? Anavi turns to him and says that she has received a request, as a solo hunter, to explore this realm. Doyeon went downstairs, noticed several people, and asked if there was anyone here already. The girl turns to him and asks, "Are they hunters too?" Anavi waves with a friendly smile and says that everything is correct. Can they join? She doesn't have time to finish because the guy says that she should know the unspoken rule. They will come in first, and they are only a couple of hours away. They do not want to share the spoils with them. Doyeon surprises his team members by asking what the hell is this with a displeased expression on his face. They don't look much like hunters, so they should get out of here while their legs and arms are still there. Maybe they'll look into some third-rate demon world. The guy got angry because of his behavior and asks what he said. Does he have no fear at all? What is their rank? Anavi tries to resolve the conflict and says that she is in order to study the realm of demons and gain experience. The guy doesn't listen to her and says she just has to answer the question. Anavi wonders what their ranks are, while Gangram and Doyeon think that their group leader has a lower rank than the other team. The guy is about to go into the portal and says that they can't even answer anything. They should forget about them and move on. Anavi turns around and says that she didn't know there were rules like that. Does it mean they have to wait? Doyeon immediately goes to the portal and asks why they have to wait. She should just ignore them. Gangram says that if things go wrong, the Cha may reveal their identities. They must go. The system notifies that they have entered the demon realm of the destroyed city. Doyeon looks around and says that there are only ruins here. The system notifies that they must destroy the statue that serves as the basis for the barrier. Gangram walks through the portal, looks away, and thinks that this is one of those areas where they must succeed in exploring in order to leave it. The system notifies you about this, that there is no time limit. He looks at it and says it looks like they need to find the statue to get out. But no one returned from here, so Anavi turns to the side and says that this kingdom is quite vast. Gangram says they don't even know what the statue looks like. Doyeon says that if it has something to do with the barrier, then they will feel an aura of magic. Perhaps they will find it sooner than they think. Suddenly someone screams very loudly and calls for help. They all immediately turn in the direction from where they heard this voice. They see the group of hunters they met earlier. One guy runs away while the other fell to the ground due to the monster attack. The girl turns around and loudly calls her brother. The guy who is lying on the ground reaches out to them and asks them to help. Many monsters created from mud are crawling towards them. The girl tries to help her brother, calls the leader, and loudly asks, "Is he doing this?" He must help them. The leader of their team clenches his teeth out of anger and says that they were mistaken. This is a dead end. He stands still and looks at how many monsters are crawling towards them. The girl who is trying to eat one of the monsters loudly asks that it not do this. Anavi helps her by attacking with a spear and asks if she is okay. A very scared girl with a broken sword cries and thanks her while Gangram helps the leader of their group. He fights with his sword while Doyeon uses exploding talismans and defeats several monsters. The girl is surprised by what happened and asks how they managed to deal with the monsters so easily. Are all hunters like this? After all the monsters have been defeated, Anavi says that it seems they have dealt with everyone. She approaches a group of hunters and asks what happened to them in a couple of minutes. The girl asks what she means. What couple of minutes? She asks with a blank expression on her face. Didn't they come in a couple of hours later? Anavi and Gangram look at each other, not understanding what she means. She says they came in almost immediately after them. Because of this, the guys stopped quarreling among themselves, and the girl says that this cannot be. Anavi says that apparently time moves differently here than in the outside world. Now she worries about those who never returned. The first group entered here a few months ago. Gangram thinks about all this and says that if they manage to survive, they must be feeding on supplies from their inventory. Anavi asks how long have they been here. She calls Doyeon and asks what did he find there. Did he find something? He doesn't answer her and looks thoughtfully at something. He gets to his feet, looks at them and says that he examined the killed monsters and realized something. He is filled with joy and pride when he says that he has killed more monsters than Gangram. This means that the title of Best Hunter is now his. What he said greatly disappointed them, and Anavi says that they should start searching. Gangram takes out the map, and the system notifies that he used the map of the Demon Kingdom. The portion studied is 0.03%. Doyeon also looks at his map and says that this will take a lot of time. Do they really need to look into every place? Gangram removes the map and says that he proposes to send Linny to find out the situation from the air. Anavi uses the ability to control the dolls and says that then she will search inside the buildings. She points the army of dolls in the direction of the buildings and says that they should look for survivors, and if they find them, a statue or something suspicious, they should report immediately. They all look at this crowd of dolls that are running in different directions. The guys from the other team quietly say that this is simply incredible. These guys are much stronger than them. Gangram looks at this and says that her charges are quite noisy. Anavi says she can silence them if necessary. He refuses, is about to say something about it, but stops because he notices something strange. He doesn't hear any voices and wonders why he doesn't hear the gods now. A system window appears in front of him, and he says that there is no connection here. Anavi looks at him with a blank expression and calls him by name. Gangram says he can't connect. There is no connection here and no way to get into the inventory either. She was very surprised by what he had just said. Anavi and Doyeon also tried to do this, but system windows appear in front of them, in which it is written that communication with the deity using telekinesis is currently unavailable. Inventory access is currently unavailable. Gangram, with a serious expression on his face, says that now they won't be able to call for help, and he doesn't want to talk about supplies at all. Anavi was horrified by what she found out and says that it turns out that they are hunters who left several months ago. Doyeon stops her by patting her on the shoulder and telling her to be quiet. He points his finger at the group of hunters. Anavi immediately turns to them and understands everything. A girl with a worried face asks if they have any problems. At this time, Gangram stands a few meters away from them and thinks about problems with communication. He thinks it turns out that the deities don't hear them. He turns to Doyeon and thinks that this is probably a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He notices him looking at him, and Doyeon thinks he needs to talk to his brother. Some time later, they all walk together through the streets of the destroyed city while Linny flies above them. They walk along the city streets and look around. A girl with a very frightened face looks around and asks where are they going. The fog is getting thicker and the buildings are looking worse. They continue walking along the street of the destroyed city and come to a fork. Gangram and Doyeon are very surprised by what they see in front of them. In the middle of this ruined city stands a huge, luxurious building that was intact. Gangram approaches the fence of this building and asks what it is. They have opened the gate to this building and are walking inside with worried faces. He opens the door and asks how this house managed to be so well preserved. They all go inside together and look around. Doyeon sniffs and says that there is something smelling here. After he said this, the others also began to sniff. A team of unknown hunters immediately ran to the door to another room after realizing that it was the smell of food. Gangram tries to stop them and loudly says that they should wait a minute. The leader of their group opens the door. They see a long table with food, and he says that he knew about it. He takes the apple and says that at least they won't have to worry about supplies anymore. The girl took the bread and said that it was so warm, it felt like it had just been baked. Gangram pulls her hand away and loudly says that they can't eat this. The leader of their group asks with a displeased expression, who is he to tell them? Did he really want to eat it all alone? Doyeon asks if they think this is the perfect opportunity to poison everyone at once. He even finds it funny that they are seriously going to eat in such a suspicious situation. Anavi comes up to him and says that it was somehow too rude. The guy says he's right. It looks very suspicious. The girl was embarrassed and said that for now they should postpone lunch and continue the search. She approaches the leader, who is very angry with him and says that he should put it down. He leaves with his team because Doyeon says he suggests they split up and look around. He goes to one of the doors and says that he will go there. The leader says they will have to meet at the front door. The girl leaves with them and says that they will look around again where they have already been. Gangram looks at his brother, who goes into another room and thinks that now is his opportunity. He follows him and begins to ask him to wait for him, but is stopped by Anavi, who calls Gangram by name. He immediately turns to her and asks what is it. She asks if he still doesn't want to join the Destiny Protection Agency. Hunters like them who don't have divine support can easily end up in a dangerous situation like this. She understands that joining the agency is a big step, but they have a lot of useful information. Gangram leans on the table and says that of course he's sorry, but he doesn't want to join the agency. Anavi lowered her hands and said that she understood him. He looks to the side and asks, are there really no better hunters? He is flattered by her offer, but maybe she should find someone else. Anavi says that she has never seen anyone better than him. She remembers everything that happened to him and says that even though Gangram, whom she knows, has a lower rank than anyone else, but he devotes himself completely to the task. He acts pragmatically but with understanding and is the first to lend a helping hand when he sees someone in need. And he also does not run out of fear even in the face of a strong enemy, so she would like him to join them. Gangram was very surprised by the sincerity with which she said this. Anavi says they have already set up a workspace for him, even prepared a welcome party and found a couple of good restaurants near the agency. But since he doesn't want to, they won't force him. Gangram sighs at what he heard and thinks that most likely she already knows about his abilities. Anavi leaves and with a happy expression on her face says that they need to look around. They will see each other later. He should be more careful. Gangram mentally thanked her for this and went to get Doyeon, whom he wanted to talk to. He goes up the stairs and says that he is sure that he came here. When he reached the end, he saw Doyeon waiting for him and watching with an ominous expression on his face. Gangram is embarrassed by this and thinks that this is not exactly the right environment to talk privately. He walks past him and asks why he looks so scared. Was he really waiting for him to persuade him to join the ranks of the Soul Team? Doyeon stands with his back to him and says that he saw a black streak trailing behind him. Immediately after this, Gangram stopped near the window, and they stood in complete silence. Doyeon slowly turns to him and asks, does he know that misfortunes increase according to karma? He runs to him very quickly, presses him against the wall, and asks loudly what he was doing when he left home. What has he done lately to accumulate so much karma? Gangram looks at him with a very serious expression on his face and asks who his own brother sees him as. He grabs him very tightly by the hand, with which he presses him against the wall and moves him to the side. At the same moment, a monster made of mud, which looks like a man, slowly approaches them. They are both very surprised when they notice it and wonder, is this a statue? Doyeon goes towards this monster and asks, interestingly, in order to get out of here, you need to destroy exactly this. He stares at it and wonders why it stopped. Suddenly the monster accelerates and runs very quickly towards them. It punches the wall very hard. Doyeon dodged this attack and immediately goes to attack back and says it's best to destroy it before it attacks. Gangram, who is standing still, is very surprised because he realized something. He stands in front of Doyeon and stops his attack with his sword. What he did surprised him very much. The monster raises its hand to attack and he asks what is he doing. Gangram says with a worried face that he has to stop. Doyeon looks at him with confusion and irritation, but quickly reacted, grabbing his clothes to pull him aside. They run into the room together, and the monster runs past them. Gangram immediately leans on the table and Doyeon closes the door to stop the monster. He sits on the floor, holds the wound on his shoulder and calls out to this idiot. He raises his voice and asks, is he completely crazy? Why did he bother him? Does he really want to die that badly? Gangram covers his face with his hand. He shakes violently and with a shocked look tells his brother that it was a man. Doyeon gets to his feet and asks if he thinks it was a person. Has he completely lost his mind? It was a monster. Suddenly the creature tries to break into their room and hits the door hard. Doyeon moves to the center of the room with the talisman and the sword and says that he should take another look at it. They see a creature that broke the door with its blows, and he asks if it looks like a person. A system window appears in front of Gangram's face, and he thinks that his opinion has not changed anyway. It says that this is Young Sira, primary rank illusory fate, earth element. Status, cursed with shapeshifting. She gives up and just stands in front of the door, which surprises Doyeon, and he asks what's going on. It doesn't attack. Gangram removes his hand behind his back and says that its range is probably limited to the corridor. Doyeon turns to him and says that this definitely wouldn't stop a person. Gangram reaches out to Linny and thinks that he cannot tell the messenger about his ability to see the status window. He says that he knows that he has Linny, which is why he is so confident in his theory. He must trust him. He points to young Sira and says that he must cleanse him. Linny immediately flies up to her and activates her cleanse ability. Because of this, strong energy begins to emanate from his head, which destroys the surface of young Sira. The layer of dirt is destroyed, and there really was a person inside. She immediately falls to the ground unconscious. Gangram immediately runs to her, and the system notifies that the curse has been lifted. Doyeon looks at this with great shock and thinks that it really was a person. Gangram lifts her up and asks if she can hear him. Young Sira can't say anything and just makes sounds. Doyeon clenches his fist very hard out of anger and thinks that Gangram realized this, but he awakened much earlier than many and even became the envoy of the protection agency. But still he is as far from his level as walking to the moon. Gangram turns to him and says that he needs to move her to a safe place. He was confused when he saw him and asks what happened. He is okay. Doyeon covers his face with his hand and says it's none of his business. He takes young Sira on his back and says that they need to go down. They must inform Anavi and other hunters about this. He goes forward and says that they cannot be allowed to destroy the statues. Gangram looks at him with a calm expression and agrees. After some time, they go down the stairs to the main hall together. Anavi notices and is about to ask if they found anyone, but is surprised to notice that they are carrying a person. She helps lower young Sira and is surprised that they managed to find a survivor. Doyeon says that maybe there is someone else. She looks at him and asks, that is, there could still be many of them. He says they turned into statue monsters because of a curse. Gangram notices Linny flying in a certain direction and calling his name. They enter the room, and he notices that Kinglin is about to eat the food that is on the table. Gangram pulls him away from the table and tells him that he shouldn't eat this suspicious food. He turns his attention to the table and notices that a lot of the food on the table has already been eaten. Immediately afterwards, he is attacked by 3 people at the same time. Gangram is surprised when he notices that he is being attacked. He immediately bends down and runs to the side, and the attacks of these monsters pass higher. He immediately activates his ability and looks at these statues. He sees in the windows of the system that these are the hunters who entered this building with him. Gangram slides under the table while the statues are running after him and thinks that they are all hunters. He asks Linny if he thinks it will be possible to clear them at the same time. Kinglin waves her head in denial, and he says that then they have no choice. Gangram rises to his feet, looks at the monsters, and thinks that he will need to calm them down first. He raises his fist and thinks that since they were able to easily jump over the table, he is confident that this will not break them. He hits one of the statues hard in the face. Some time later, Anavi sighs displeasedly and says that they were talking, that you can't eat everything they find here. A group of hunters who were disenchanted are sitting on the floor looking very guilty. Doyan says with a calm face that they just turned into statues. Gangram examines the dish and says that he thinks the smell coming from the food is a spell aimed at attracting attention. But it is not exactly. Anavi says it seems that those who have been here too long simply have no choice. Young Sira comes to her senses, grabs her head and starts making sounds. With a very frightened and depressed look, she wants to say something about what is upstairs. Gangram asks if they managed to learn at least something from her. Anavi says she asked her a couple of questions. She raises her head and says that, however, she could only find out that there is something on the 5th floor. Doyan turns to the group of hunters and says that they will stay here with the girl and they will go up to the 5th floor. Some time later, they went up to the 4th floor and saw many statues standing still. Doyan looks at this with great surprise and asks, "Are these all people? Maybe they should just kill them all. So much space will be freed up on the floors." Anavi says to the messenger with a dissatisfied face that he shouldn't joke like that. Doyan turns to her and says that he is serious now. He will start by saying that they are not obliged to save them. They are here to clear out the dungeon. Gangram, eyes blazing, grabs him by the shoulder and says he doesn't think it's worth it. Some of them are cursed, or rather most of them. Doyan removes his hand from his shoulder and says that apparently he's the only bad one here. And which of all these statues are people? He takes out a pack of talismans and says he has an idea. He just has to say who it is. Gangram takes out an item with the fate of a tertiary rank insect called insect honey and says that there are too many of them. He will mark them with this. They try to stop him, but he doesn't listen and quickly runs towards the statues. He runs very quickly through the crowd of statues and smears honey on the heads of people who have been cursed. Doyan is very worried about this and loudly says that it is very dangerous. Gangram turns to him and asks, are they seriously going to yell at him right now? Doyan immediately drops the talismans, calls Anavi, and says that they should follow him. His talismans hit people marked with honey. He activates the ability, thanks to which he raises the statues above the ground, and together they attack the monsters that remain in place. After some time, when they defeated all the monsters on this floor, Gangram holds Linny, looks at the hanging statues, and says that now all that remains is to cleanse them. Anavi says he must wait. She thinks it's better to finish the raid first and then help them. Otherwise, real chaos will begin here. Doyan smells a very unpleasant smell that disgusts him, and this attracts Anavi's attention. They stand in front of the stairs, and he says that it stinks very much. She doesn't feel it and asks what stinks here. Unexpectedly, they smelled this smell and were very surprised because of it. They look at the stairs leading to the 5th floor, and Doyan says it smells like blood. What's going on upstairs anyway? Gangram, with a serious expression on his face, thinks it is the smell of death. They all go up to the 5th floor together and see a corridor, from the end of which a very dark aura emanates. He looks down and notices something that attracts his attention. He notices many human bones lying on the floor. He creates a flame in his hand, illuminates this corridor, and they all look at the bones. Anavi, looking alarmed, is about to say something about these hunters, but stops. She sits down, picks up the skull, and says that they died when they were human. They could help them if they turned into statues. Doyen looks at all this with a worried look and says nothing. He hears a loud sound from the end of the corridor and turns sharply in that direction. He and Gangram immediately prepare for battle and look in the same direction. They see a human silhouette slowly walking towards them. Anavi looks at this with great surprise and is surprised. She abruptly begins to run towards this man and loudly says that this is a survivor. Gangram stopped her by grabbing her hand and telling her that she must stop. He asks, "When was the last time hunters entered this dungeon, if you don't count them?" Anavi turns to him and asks why he is asking this now. Gangram asks if she knows or not. She thinks about it and says that she read that it seemed like it. She was very shocked when she remembered and said that it was a week ago. Gangram lets go of her hand and says that this means that he spent at least 400 days here. And if he ended up here even earlier, then several years have passed for him here. What did he eat here and why didn't he turn into a monster? A man with a crazy look walks towards them and makes unintelligible sounds. He opens his mouth wide and screams loudly. Doyen stands in front of Anavi and asks, "It doesn't matter. He's still human, right?" He throws away his talismans and loudly says that first they must pacify him, and therefore they will think about it. The man jumps and dodges the first amulet before using fire to destroy the remaining 2 amulets. He runs up to Doyen very quickly and bites his hand very hard. He tries to stop this madman, but fails. Anavi runs up to him and calls the messenger. She strikes with her weapon and knocks back the man who attacked them very hard. He lands on his feet and is stopped by the claws he has stuck into the floor. Anavi turns around and asks if he's okay. Doyen holds the wound on his hand and says he's fine. Gangram looks out the system window as she turns to the man and says that he was stronger than she thought. The madman opens his mouth wide and makes unintelligible sounds. He creates flames in his hands and launches fireballs at them. Anavi and Doyen swing their weapons and dispel this fire. She attacks but misses and asks how can a person have the Kai energy that ghosts have. The distraught man bounces off the wall and attacks Doyen, who stops him with his swords. He strains very hard to hold back this attack and asks if even Anavi is stronger than him. He continues to hold the man back as she runs towards them to attack them from behind. She strikes, but the madman very quickly jumps onto the wall and moves on. They both turn around with a worried look and call Gangram. At this time he is in such severe shock that he cannot move. The man is about to attack him while he is looking at the system window, which consisted of various unrelated symbols. He dives into the man's memories when he and his team came to this demon realm. They say that they must be the first to clear this place. They sit together and ask if they have anything left that they can eat. No, they have nothing left. What will they do? They run away from the monsters and loudly says that Hunzio has turned into a monster. After some time, when there were only 2 of them left, they sit on the stairs and say that this is the end. They are all dead. The man grabs the girl, who passes out, and tells her she needs to get herself together. He's sure of it, that they will soon come for them and save them. The girl refuses and says that she can't do this anymore. He couldn't understand the last words she said. Gangram shakes out the memory of Doyen calling his name and loudly asking what he is doing. He looks up and sees a man running to attack him. Doyen steps between them and pushes him aside while she glares at the man. He turns around and says loudly that he must get the sword with 7 branches. He had already been to the blacksmith. Gangram immediately takes out this sword and thinks that he is right. This has been improved. The system notifies that this sword has not yet been smelted. Dragon Destiny, primary rank, made from wood that was struck by lightning. Gangram points its sword at the man and the system notifies that it has strong yang energy and drives away evil. The man covers his head with his hand from the strong energy that comes from this sword. He runs away very quickly down the corridor and Gangram says that they should not follow him. He says with a worried look that it seems they should find out something about this man. Some time later, when they left the 5th floor, Doyeon asks if it was because he was too close to the barrier. Anavi asks, that is, this happened to him because of his heavy karma. Gangram says that's mostly true. Doyeon says that now he understands why he is so strong and understands his reaction to the sword. Some studies say that performance can increase if you are close to the barrier. Anavi asks if they think it is possible to socialize him. Doyeon asks if she is offering to capture him alive. What if it interferes with them? She says that, however, such karma is not a reason to kill him. Gangram stops listening to them and wonders how much karma it takes to cross this barrier. He accumulated karma due to a penalty for his abilities. But in the original, it increased for crimes such as robbery, torture, murder, etc. The more serious the crime, the more karma. If what he saw was the past of that person, it turns out that he managed to live to this day because of the most terrible crime. How much karma does he have? And how much of it does he have? How close can he get to the barrier? Doyeon brought him out of his thoughts by grabbing him by the shoulder, and they both called his name. He gets angry and asks why he doesn't listen to what they say. Gangram says he's fine now. Doyeon leaves and says that then they should go back and finish what they started. Gangram stands still and asks what will happen to that person. He turns to him and says that he will not go to them if they have a sword with 7 branches. Gangram is very surprised and asks if he wants to leave it here. Maybe they can clean it up like they did with Gangchori. Anavi turns to him and says that she wanted to ask the team leader to help with this once they are done with the cleanup. Gangram says that if they take their time with this, he doesn't have time to finish because an irritated Doyeon says that he is too strong. Besides, what choice do they have? Does he want 3 to die while saving 1? Gangram asks what if he has an idea. They were surprised by this and looked at him silently. He clenches his fist in front of him and says with a determined look that they can do this. Some time later, Doyeon is gluing talismans on the 5th floor and thinks that he doesn't like this state of affairs. He remembers what happened and thinks that both times, both then and now, ended with them doing what Gangram wanted. Why does it happen that the option he proposes always turns out to be the best? Doyeon pressed his head against the wall and thinks that this is not the case. How can he blame him if he still has a long way to go to reach his abilities? Gangram approaches him and tells his brother that Anavi says everything is ready. Doyeon says he's done here too. Gangram says with a small smile that they should lure them out. Doyeon calls his name and asks if he really thinks this is enough. If his charms are not enough to catch him, then the plan will immediately fail. Does he believe in him that much? Gangram stands still and is silent for several seconds. He goes further and says that these are his talismans, so he believes in him. Doyeon is surprised by what he said and his hand slowly slides down the wall. He clenches his hand into a fist and thinks with a serious face, did he really say that? He hangs his head and says that he has become a better person since their last meeting. He thinks that at this time many believe in the importance of the connection between man and God, so it is natural that a strong being wants to take possession of him. Although, to be honest, this somehow doesn't really calm him down. He quietly says that he hates him. Some time later, Gangram slowly walks along the 5th floor, where many skeletons are scattered. A madman comes out to him on all fours, making incomprehensible sounds. He calmly stops in front of him and says that he doesn't need to be so careful. He shows his empty hands and says that he did not bring this sword. The man looks at him and his eyes begin to glow brightly. He attacks him and is about to bite his leg, but Gangram predicted this and jumped aside. The man throws a blow with his hand, but misses and is surprised that it has disappeared. He immediately starts looking around the room to find it. Gangram went behind him and, while invisible, takes out his sword, which emits bright energy. He becomes visible and is about to attack with his sword, but the man notices him immediately. Gangram strikes several times with his sword, but the men manage to escape from him. He continues to run and watches his opponent who is chasing him. He falls into a trap and crashes into a barrier that was installed in this corridor. A magical barrier appears around the man due to the talismans. Ropes of magic appear that capture the man, and he begins to scream loudly. He destroys the barrier with his fire magic, and the system notifies that an unknown ability has been activated. Doyeon runs next to him and grabs one of his talismans that he was using. He runs towards the man and says that he didn't expect it to work the first time. Running next to him is an army of dolls created by Anavi's ability. They run to attack the man, and he fights them off with fire magic attacks. The dolls become larger because of this, and the system notifies that the earthen dolls are becoming stronger thanks to the fire. The man looks with a worried look at these huge dolls that stand in front of him. He continues to use his magic to attack it, and does not notice the chains of fire that wrap around him. Doyeon uses his magic and says loudly that it won't help him. He stops the man with his spell, and the system notifies that the target's mana is sealed. Unknown ability has been disabled. Anavi is happy about what is happening and is about to say something, but immediately stops. The huge statue strikes with a very strong sword and destroys the barrier that was holding the man back. This surprised them all very much, and they silently look at what is happening. They look at a statue of a woman with a huge sword, and the system notifies that the statue has become stronger due to the effect of the flame. Statue of Concord, Phantom Fate, primary rank. This statue protects a certain area and punishes invaders. Until they cope with this, they will not be able to leave this place. Her abilities depend on the number of invaders. This monster raises its head and looks at them. Gangram says loudly that this is the statue they were looking for. The system notifies you about this, that they must destroy the barrier vessel statue. The Statue of Agreement raises its huge sword above its head to attack. She delivers a very strong blow and cuts off the heads of several dolls at once. They are about to fight this statue, and a man runs past them and is about to run away. Doyeon notices this and loudly says that they have to catch him so he doesn't escape. Gangram gets in his way and stabs his sword into the floor to stop him. Anavi creates a thick wall in front of the statue and loudly says that it will delay the boss. This monster immediately swings his sword in front of this wall. It destroys the top of the wall, but Anavi does her best to maintain the spell. The man at this moment attacks Doyeon, and he blocks these attacks. Gangram looks at what is happening and quietly says that this is not true. He thinks he shouldn't be here. He runs next to Anavi, touches her shoulder, and says that he will take care of the boss. He jumps over the wall she created and loudly says that he will try to get her out of here. She must take care of the survivors first. Anavi takes out several stone squares, turns around, and says that she understands him. The system notifies that it is using the doll control skill. She creates many dolls and says loudly that they must grab him. Those who were small before must increase in size. The many dolls she created capture the man and prevent him from escaping. The amulets that were attached to several dolls are activated, and a barrier is again created around the man. Doyeon uses the binding ability and controls large amounts of energy. The dolls move away from this man, and the barrier around him changes. Next to the bound man, two walls of energy appear and join around his neck. Doyeon attaches the talisman to the man's forehead, and the system notifies that the bound target has fallen asleep. He immediately turns around and loudly says that they are done here. Now they need to quickly go after Gangram. The wall she created is destroyed, and Anavi agrees with him. They run some distance along the corridor, and Doyeon stops with a shocked expression on his face. They see a very strong flame in this corridor, and they loudly call his name. He is about to use the talismans, but stops when he notices something. Anavi quickly runs towards him and loudly asks if he is okay. She is about to say that they will help him, but she also notices something and stops. Gangram stands on the Statue of Agreement with a crazed expression and swings his sword. He delivers a very strong blow, and the system notifies about it. That he destroyed the Statue of Consent. He receives an additional reward for defeating an opponent of a higher class than him. Gangram, with a very stern expression on his face, raises his head and looks at the people in front of him. Do-yeon panics very much about this, and his hands shake very much due to horror. The system notifies you that the combat instinct ability is disabled. Anavi runs to Gangram, calls his name, and asks if he is okay. He wipes his face, agrees, and asks what happened to the survivors. She says with a happy face that they have collected them all. The system notifies that the barrier of the demon dungeon is being destroyed. They can now leave the dungeon. They notice a large portal that has appeared nearby, and Anavi says that, apparently, this is the exit. Do-yeon thinks very hard as she says that they probably couldn't have done it without him. Gangram says he was just lucky. Anavi says that thanks to him they were able to overcome the curse and bring everyone back to life. Do-yeon is currently standing still, remembering the difference between them, Gangram, and wondering if he gets closer to the barrier, will he be able to become as strong as him due to karma? They both look at each other, and Gangram sighs with a serious expression on his face. Some time later, they return to the madman, and Linny uses the purification ability on him. System windows appear in front of Gangram, indicating that the target has crossed the barrier. The selected target cannot be cleared. He is very upset about this and clenches his teeth tightly. Anavi notices his reaction and asks if something is wrong. Gangram looks at this man and says that this man has already crossed the barrier. What they see now is as if it were just a vessel without a soul. He cannot return him to normal life. Do-yeon was very surprised by this and wondered if he had no soul. This person can't come back. He turns to the rest of the team and wonders, what if this is the price that must be paid for such karma? Then, what did Gangram lose? He sees his very sinister aura and imagines him with bandages around his neck and limbs with a crazed face. Gangram is actually standing with a calm expression on his face and notices something strange. He turns around and says that he will go with Linny to the 4th floor. Anavi turns sharply to him and says that he must wait. If he doesn't mind, then she can go. He doesn't look very good right now. Gangram says that's not true, he's fine. She says that she will bring the survivors here if he promises to get some rest. She takes Linny in her arms and says that, to be honest, she would be glad if he left first, but she can't cope without the killin'. She hopes that the messenger will take care of these two. Do-yeon silently looks at the madman, and Gangram tries to stop her. He lowers his head and thinks that being alone with him is uncomfortable. Moreover, because of it, he cannot think about the karma that he has accumulated. He remembers what happened in a past life, and a silhouette of a man appears in front of him from the shadows. This man tells this child that he needs to come over to this side too. Gangram clenches his teeth very hard, and suddenly Do-yeon grabs him by the shoulder, turns him towards him, and calls him by name. They look at each other silently for several seconds. Gangram looks away and thinks that, to be honest, he doesn't really want to talk to him. Couldn't he just leave him alone? He asks what he needs. He wonders what he wants to tell him this time. Do-yeon looks at him with a worried face and loudly says that he should quit hunting now. Who knows how much more karma he will accumulate while completing this task. He is sure that she wants to end up just like this madman. Gangram was surprised by this, but immediately afterwards he sighed with a smile. He takes Do-yeon's hand away from him and asks why is he pretending to care about him. He acted as if they were strangers, but now he started to worry about him. He hates him. Do-yeon was very surprised by what he just said. He grabs Gangram by the clothes and loudly agrees and says that everything is exactly like that. How could it be otherwise? After all, he took for himself everything he dreamed of, even his mother. Of course he hates it. Do-yeon calmed down a little and wants to say something else. He puts his hand down and says that doesn't mean he wants him to become like him. He clenches his teeth very hard and begins to cry, which greatly surprised Gangram. He is confused by this and silently looks down. Do-yeon clenched his fist tightly and asks who he thinks he is if he thought that he could wish for such a thing. Gangram asks, so he doesn't want him to die. Doyeon looks at him with tears in his eyes and loudly says that this is exactly how it is. Gangram says that then he should listen to him carefully. Doyeon wipes his tears with his sleeve and asks what he wants to say. Gangram says that he knows the future. This surprised his brother very much, and he looks at him with great surprise. Sometime after leaving the dungeon, Anavi says on the phone that they rescued a total of 24 people. Doyeon collects the ropes with amulets and asks how he got here. Gangram stands next to him and asks what does he mean. Doyeon asks if he came here. Gangram waves his head in refusal, and he says that he must wait a little. He takes things away in his hands and says that they should escort everyone to the Destiny Protection Agency, and they themselves will continue the conversation at home. Some time later, when the two of them arrived at the house where they lived as children, Gangram stops in front of the entrance and looks at this house with a small smile. Doyeon turns to him and asks why he stopped there. They walk into the courtyard and Gangram looks at the place where he met Hwajong. Doyeon opens the door, turns around and says that they are here. They enter the room and he says that he probably didn't ask about Mom because he knew everything himself. And he knows how she died, right? Gangram looks at Hwajong's photo and says it was self-immolation. Doyeon attaches his amulet to the wall and remains silent for a few seconds. He asks, maybe he also knows the reason for this. Gangram says he doesn't know this. Doyeon finishes attaching the amulets in the room and a magical barrier appears around the house. He closes the door and Gangram immediately turns to him. He turns and says that Mom said she can see the future, just like him. A talented shaman can see the past, present, and future. This is her destiny. A very worried Hwajong reaches for the flame and thinks she will find a better way out. Doyeon is holding a piece of paper in her hand that says, among those bestowed upon her by fate. He raises his head and looks at the brightly burning house with obvious horror. Several people try to encourage him and run to put out the fire. Doyeon falls to his knees and wonders how this could be the best thing. Currently, he says with his eyes closed that he just can't get over what his mother wrote in the note. But he knew nothing and could do nothing to help her. He turns around and says he won't let that happen again, so he had to tell him what he wanted to talk about. Some time ago in the dungeon, when Gangram talked about seeing the future, Doyeon asks what future is he talking about. He says that in 5 years he will be killed. What he said really surprised him and Doyeon thought about it for a few seconds. He says loudly that he must wait. He thought he didn't see things like that anymore. Mom suppressed his divine energy with the help of a ritual. Gangram agrees and says that, however, he got too close to the border, and the compass of fate began to show visions of the future and past. Doyeon is very worried about this, grabs his hand and asks loudly, is he joking now? How close is he to the border? Gangram says he doesn't know this. To be honest, he doesn't think he can change the future on his own, so he asks him for help. Doyeon asks what can he do. He knows less than he does about the border, karma, and the future, so he should ask his god. Gangram says that he never believed in them. Doyeon is very surprised by this and asks loudly what did he just say. Gangram asks if he has already forgotten. He clenches his fist tightly and says with an angry expression that one of them killed his parents. He calmed down, covered his face with his hand, and asked if they were so different from each other. He doesn't believe in gods and never will. Currently, Gangram asks if they do this, won't his god be able to overhear their conversation too? Doyeon says that's exactly how it is. This amulet can completely isolate space. Gangram says that is good, then he should listen to him. After that, he briefly related the events of his past life. Starting from his childhood, his time as a trainee, their days together in the Flying Tiger sect, ending with what happened in the demon dungeon involving Baekhyun. He says that's where everyone was killed. Doyeon asks what did he say. The entire team that went on the raid was deprived of their lives. Gangram says she said she would spare everyone if he died. He leans against the wall and says that so he doesn't have to worry, even if everything doesn't go according to plan. This will all end if he just dies. Do-yeon became very angry because of what he said. He calms down and asks he doesn't know why she wants to kill him. Gangram says that he doesn't know this, that's why he wants to find her. Do-yeon gets to his feet and asks how he's going to do this. He only knows her name and what she looks like. Gangram says she has divine destiny, primary rank. Do-yeon is shocked by what he just said and asks what did he say. Gangram asks, isn't it weird? This is a very rare class, she is very strong, but no one knows her. Do-yeon asks if he has any idea who it could be. Gangram says he has a couple of people in mind. One of them is the director of the Destiny Protection Agency. At least he thinks so. Do-yeon thinks that the director's name and appearance are unknown. That's true. Only team leaders can meet with directors. He asks, so he suggests that he find out the identity of the director. If he did not know, then he does not occupy such a high position. He does not have enough authority to find such information. Gangram looks at him for a few seconds and says nothing. He says that apparently he is right and he cannot do this. Since he can't, then he'll have to do it himself. Do-yeon gets really angry about this and asks what he's trying to achieve. Gangram looks at him with a small smile and asks if he's just scared. If that's not the case, then he can at least remember Baek-young's appearance. Do-yeon gets very angry about this and gives off a strong aura. He snatches the photo from Gangram's hands, who says that he printed her photo using a memory projector. Do-yeon says how insensitive he is. He agrees to this because he feels sorry for him. Gangram says he is grateful for the compliment. Do-yeon turns his attention to the photo he took and is surprised by what he sees. He raises his head and says that he has seen her before. Gangram is surprised by this and asks, is it true? Does he know who it is? Do-yeon remembers the past and says that he doesn't know for sure, but she had some kind of strange aura. That's why he remembered meeting her. Gangram asks when was this and where. Did they meet at an agency? Do-yeon agrees and says he should wait. He looks at Hwa-jung's photo and tries to remember it. He says that he saw her near the house a few days before his mother passed away. Gangram turns around very sharply with a very worried expression on his face and thinks about something. Do-yeon clutches Baek-young's photo and says that to be honest, there were a lot of weird things about Mom's death. The same suicide note and the fact that she completely burned the house down. So maybe, Gangram doesn't listen to what he says and touches Hwa-jung's photo with trembling hands. He wonders with a shocked expression, maybe it was Baek-young who killed his teacher. His friends, family and parents, this woman who came for him took it all away from him. He goes into an imagination where Baek-young stands in front of him and thinks that she did this right in front of him, when he was still unaware. It all happened because of her. His hand is shaking very much because of the anger he feels towards her. He clenches his hand into a fist and thinks that he will definitely find her and make her pay for everything.